Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ros White, for those who don't know, and I welcome you to the Council Chamber here this afternoon to the Planning Committee East meeting. I hope that we'll be able to move this forward fairly promptly. I'm very conscious that we kept a number of you waiting at the last meeting, and again, I'd like to extend my apologies for that. We had a very heavily laden agenda. However, we'll move forward and hopefully do so with some speed. First of all, apologies for absence.
Yes, so we have two apologies today. Councillor Philip Ham is unwell, so Councillor Alistair Hendry is subbing, and Councillor Susanna Hart has sent her apologies as she's unwell.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, we'll move on to item 2, which were the minutes of the last meeting, pages 13 to 24. These have been circulated to the committee in advance, and I hope that you've been able to notify if you have any amendments. So I'll go through them quickly in a time-honoured way of pages 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9. And there were some public questions again there on pages 9, 10, and 11. Are people content with these? I see no comments. Could I have a proposer then and a seconder? Proposed by Councillor Lovell and seconded by Councillor Denton. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everyone.
There are two sets of minutes, actually, Chair.
Thank you.
Which set was that one? I'm not sure.
Yep, and then we have the second set, which is from the Tuesday. The previous ones were Monday. Anyway, on Tuesday, the 4th of November. And again, these have been circulated, and I will go through them page by page, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, and 9. Are people content by our inaccurate record? Thank you. Could I have a proposer, Councillor Lovell, and a seconder? Councillor Robbins, thank you very much indeed, everyone. Right, on to item 3, declarations of interest. And these, of course, are not required for the Twin Hatters, which are very clearly stated on the website. Any further declarations of interest on the agenda? No. Okay, thank you for that. We'll then move on to public question time. And I've not been advised of any general public questions. No, we don't have any today. Right, good. We're on to item 5 then, and this is the delayed planning application 2024 1441 reserve matters, land south of Fairbanks, Coalpit Lane. And I will ask the officer to give a presentation on this.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So this is an application for reserve matters in respect of the erection of 45 dwellings, landscaping, infrastructure and associated works at land south of Fairbanks, Coalpit Lane, Stoke St Michael. And it follows an appeal decision in 2023 for outline planning permission for up to 47 dwellings, with the access onto Coalpit Lane agreed at the outline stage. The access point cannot be revisited as part of this reserve matters application, nor can the obligations that were secured in the section 106. Those will be listed on a later slide. So the reserve matters for determination here today are layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. So here we have the site location plan, showing the site to the north of Stoke St Michael, as well as an aerial view of the site on the left there. And this shows the key constraints. So there's an existing public right-of-way that runs across the site, joining Coalpit Lane to Mill Lane and Parkman Hill. There's a Grade 2 listed building to the southeast known as the Mill, or it's shown here, Stoke Mill. And its adjacent cottage, known as Mill Cottage. They're both shown in pink there. And the areas within the consultation buffer zone for the Mells Valley Special Area of Conservation, that's designated primarily to protect a significant population of greater horseshoe bats. It may also affect the Mendip Woodland Special Area of Conservation and the St Dunstan's Well catchment site of special scientific interest. So that's just to the north here, shown in green on this plan here. This is just a topographical plan showing the existing levels across the site slopes from Coalpit Lane down to Mill Lane, with a steeper ridge across the centre. So the steepest areas you can see here where the lines are closest, they're outside of the red line boundary. And this is the planning layout. So it shows the proposed layout as well as the mix of housing. So it's proposed to have 2 1-beds, 18 2-beds, 23 3-beds and 2 4-beds. The approved access that was approved at outline stage from Coalpit Lane, it comes in here and it splits off into 2 main areas. The open space is positioned to the southeast here, and the drainage basin, as well as the local equipped area for play, which is shown in yellow here. So this is the affordable housing plan. So it shows the layout of the affordable housing that was secured by the Section 106 agreement outline stage. So the pink properties are for shared ownership, so that's these 3 here, and the green properties are for social rent. The yellow properties, they're not part of the legal agreement, as the policy requirements only allow the planning authority to secure 30% affordable housing. However, the applicant is a registered provider and they do intend to deliver a 100% affordable scheme. So this slide shows the height of the dwellings. So the majority are 2-storey, with only plot 34 to the southeast proposed to be a 1.5-storey dwelling with rooms in the roof space. So that's that one there. And this shows the arrangements for landscaping the site, which I'll show in more detail on the next slide. So the off-site ecological mitigation that was secured at outline stage is shown to the northeast. So that's the woodland here in the dark green and the grassland planting here, as well as the hedge bank feature that borders the development, sort of separating the dwelling from the steep drop-off in topography. So that sort of runs along the edge here. There was a habitat regulations assessment that took place at outline stage, and that looked at the impact of the development on the adjacent site of special scientific interest and also the wider catchments of the special areas of conservation. That concluded that the proposed development is unlikely to have an adverse effect on their integrity, and it provided the mitigation measures are secured. So that's the mitigation that was agreed as part of the HRA. That's the woodland and grassland planting here. It also included a lighting scheme, a landscape and ecological management plan, and biodiversity enhancements in the form of significant additional planting. So that's that I mentioned here, and to the north of the development. So this is a more detailed planting plan with the site split into 2. So this is the northern half of the site. So it's proposed to have significant tree planting, the planting of native hedgerows, shrubs, several types of grass, and bulb planting. Sorry, I lost connection there, but it looks like it's still up there. And the southern half of the site, the planting plan's been amended during the course of the application to relocate some trees that were here. The reason for that is that they prevented natural surveillance from these dwellings across to the play area. So that's why that's been amended. The text in the boxes here, you won't be able to see at this sort of scale, but just as an example, some of the street trees that are proposed include field maple, acers, magnolia, crabapple, oak, wild cherry and lime trees. And this shows details of the play areas design and photos of similar installations for reference. So wooden equipment's proposed, and also some boulders, a bench and a refuse bin. And the applicant is, in addition to providing this on site, the applicant's also making contributions towards improvements to existing play areas within 5 miles of the development. And that was secured through the Section 106 agreement at outline stage. So this shows the proposed parking plan. The blue spaces show parking that are allocated to a particular dwelling, whilst the orange, sort of yellowy orange spaces indicate visitors parking. There's also yellow boxes, I don't know if you can see those, yeah, just about, that show the cycle storage units, and there's also orange and purple dots that show the post and wall mounted electric vehicle charging points that are proposed. So originally the scheme proposed 103 parking spaces for 47 units when the scheme came in. The parking standards for 47 units required 138 units. So this initial design included several triple tandem parking spaces, which are more difficult for households to use effectively, and this resulted in the site being dominated by parked cars. And the triple tandem spaces were also considered to reduce the garden sizes. So the scheme's been amended during the course of the application, and these triple tandem spaces have been removed. And the number of dwellings have also been reduced from 47 to 45. So following that reduction, the required parking provision, including visitors parking, would be 134.5 parking bays, but only 114 parking bays are proposed. So there's all of around 20 bays. So the Highway Authority have expressed concern over this reduction in parking, and the under provision's been weighed in the planning balance. So that's in the planning balance section of your committee report. Some things for members to consider when assessing this balance. So meeting the parking standards without using the triple tandem spaces would require significant parking areas to the front and side of the dwellings, which would be detrimental to the street scene. And it would also require a reduction in the number of units, which would impact the number of affordable houses that would be delivered. Another point to consider is that garages are not proposed as part of the scheme. So in contrast, market housing developments would often include garages, and if they were proposed here, this would then be counted towards meeting the parking standards, although in reality they are often frequently used for storage rather than parking. It's also worth noting that all the dwellings will have access to at least 2 or 3 parking spaces each, and that there's an over provision in visitors parking, so 16 visitors parking spaces are provided compared to the required 9, and these can be used more flexibly even than the allocated spaces. Each dwelling also has access to cycle parking, as I mentioned previously, and that was a requirement of the outline approval. There was a condition on there for cycle parking. So this shows the arrangements for waste collection. It includes 5 bin collection points. They're shown in pink, sort of dotted around. Somerset Waste officers that are satisfied with this arrangement, provided the bin collection points are clearly marked out, so a condition has been recommended for that. And the plan also shows the proposed bin and recycling storage within back gardens, and details of that were required by condition 6 of the outline permission. So we've got some street scenes here. So the top one is Coalpit Lane. So it shows the relationship between the proposed dwellings and the existing dwellings on Coalpit Lane. So this property here is Fairbanks, which is an existing dwelling. These are the proposed dwellings, and then this property here is an existing bungalow known as Glenview. The second section runs along this row on the layout plan here, and cuts through the drainage basin and the open space. The site's been divided into 2 character areas. So to the north is an area that the applicants referred to as Stoke Reach, and to the south Mill Green. So Stoke Reach is intended to feature more variety in the roof lines and ridge heights, whilst Mill Green to the south will primarily consist of more simple up and over gable roof lines with chimneys in key locations. So this shows some sections. So the first section here, this is the existing property Fairbanks on Coalpit Lane, and this just shows the relationship with plots 6 to 8 proposed here. And the second section cuts through plot 24 here, and then also shows the hedge bank, which is proposed to border the east of the site. So that's plot 24 there and the hedge bank there. So this section is cuts through here, so it shows a garage belonging to a property on St Michael's Close, and also a bungalow on St Michael's Close. And then this last section, this property here is the 1.5 storey dwelling that's proposed, and this is 20 St Michael's Close, shown in section form. I've also included the separation distances between the southernmost plots and the existing properties on St Michael's Close. So these vary between 26 metres up to 28.5 metres. So that's the window to window distance, which officers consider as an acceptable distance that wouldn't have a detrimental impact on amenity. So this is the materials plan. So roof materials are proposed to be a mix of grey slate effect tiles in the northern half and dark red double Roman concrete interlocking tiles in the southern half. 2 external wall finish options are proposed. So there's a light weathered recon stone with in a random arrangement with a natural light mortar colour. And the other option is a buff or grey brick, also with a natural light mortar. So the use of grey brick is primarily to the north of the site, and in the Stoke Reach character area, which is sort of the pinker south of the site here. Condition 5 of the outline appeal decision required the submission of details and samples of materials to be used. So the final details will be agreed prior to the construction of any external walls as part of that condition. So the following slides show the variations on the different house types, starting with the 2 beds. There's quite a lot of these, so I'll just flick through them fairly quickly, but I'm happy to go back to any of them if members want a closer look. Yeah, so these are all still 2 beds. Oops. And now this is on to 3-bedroom properties. There's a few examples of those. And this is a 3-bed as well, but it's the design of the 1.5 storey dwelling that's proposed to overlook the open space. And this is one of the 2 4-bedroom properties that are proposed. And that's the second 4-bed. And then lastly, this is the 2 1-bedroom flats. So there's one on each floor with their own separate entrance. So this shows the proposed boundary treatments. So it's intended to have 1.8 metre close board fencing to the rear of the dwellings and to subdivide the gardens. On the end dwellings where it's more visible, it's intended to use a 1.8 metre buff brick wall. 1.2 metre post and rail boundaries are sort of shown throughout, particularly board in the open space, so sort of here and here in the pink there. Some other examples of boundary treatments. There's 0.6 metre recon stone walls proposed in prominent areas around here and around the entrance to the site. And these are just some plans and images of the enclosures. So we've got timber, post and rail and bollards here. So recon stone walls, buff brick walling, railings and gates that are proposed to be used. Some fencing with a trellis on top. So this is proposed only between Plot 8 and Fairbanks, which is the existing property to the northwest of the site. Some more handrail examples and close board fencing. So the drainage strategy, so this ensures that no flooding will occur on the site in a 1 in 100 year storm event, and there's an additional 45% allowance to allow for climate change. So the surface water is proposed to discharge into the existing drainage network, which ultimately flows on into a watercourse via a culvert under the highway to the east down here, and then up into the watercourse. So the discharge rate is restricted to 5.1 litres, which was what was agreed at outline stage. And there's attenuation measures proposed. So a detention basin, multiple cellular storage tanks, which would provide additional capacity. There's also flow control chambers proposed, which are located without the site to regulate the flow. The drainage scheme incorporates sort of permeable paving, and outline condition 17 did require the submission of a sustainable urban drainage scheme. So that condition would still need to be discharged prior to commencement of development. The lead local flood authority have also recommended an additional condition. So this will require the submission of a drainage strategy just for the construction period as well. A foul water strategy has also been agreed with Wessex Water. So the existing foul sewer pumping station to the southeast outside of the site has capacity to accommodate the development. It was upgraded in 2021, so that doubled its capacity. And Wessex Water have also worked with the developer to provide additional on-site storage to hold the sewerage back should the station become overwhelmed during high demand. So this slide just helps explain how the scheme's evolved over time. So the outline illustrative layout is pictured on the left, as that shows how the original scheme for 47 units could have been laid out. The centre image is as it was originally submitted for Reserve Matters back in last year in 2024. So that was for 47 units, and you can see that although it benefits from sort of large areas of open space, the street scene was more dominated by parking, so sort of up here and here. So the image on the right is the current proposal following amendments. So it's got open space that meets the requirements of the Section 106 and has a reduction in the number of units to 45. And this allows for more tree planting to the front of dwellings, as opposed to the sort of banks of parking. And in the opinion of officers, this shows a higher quality urban design than was originally submitted. So I'll just flick through a few site photos. So the first one's looking south from the access point on Coalpit Lane, and then this is looking north from the same point. So on the left, we've got the existing access point onto the existing access onto Coalpit Lane and the gate to the public right-of-way. And then the second photo on the right here is looking east across the site towards Mill Lane and Parkman's Hill and towards the listed buildings in the distance. So the picture on the left is looking north towards the property known as Fairbanks, which you can see here. And then around the same point, looking south towards St Michael's Close. And this is the bungalow known as Glenview visible on the right here. So this is looking southeast from a high point on the public footpath. So that's looking towards properties on St Michael's Close. And then on the right, we've got the same properties from further east along the right-of-way. So this image is further down the hill, looking back up the right-of-way with the roofs of properties on Coalpit Lane visible in the distance. This picture on the right is taken outside of the site to the southeast, so it's looking up Parkman's Hill towards one of the Grade 2 listed buildings at Stoke Mill. And this is the facing elevation of the other Grade 2 listed building, Mill Cottage, so that's taken from Mill Lane. So currently the former Mendip district can demonstrate a 2.84 year supply of deliverable housing land. So with the absence of a 5-year land supply, the Tiltwood balance would add weight to the positive determination of this application, provided that any adverse impacts would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So in terms of identified harms, it's considered that there's less than substantial harm to the setting of the Grade 2 listed buildings. So at outline stage, the inspector considered that this harm was outweighed by the benefits, provided that the Reserve Matters application positioned the open space between the listed buildings and the rest of the development to minimise the impact, and that's been brought forward on this scheme before us. The Conservation Officer has agreed that the level of harm on this Reserve Matters application reflects that was expected at outline stage. The other harm identified is the parking provision, as it doesn't meet the parking standards requirements, although each unit does benefit from 2 or 3 spaces each, and there is an over-provision of visitors parking. So officers do not consider this would result in an unacceptable highway safety impact, nor would the cumulative impact on the road network be severe, particularly in the context of the outline approval for an increased number of units. So this slide lists all the benefits of the scheme taken together with the outline. So the provision of 45 new homes, contributing towards the 5-year housing land supply and local economy. 30% affordable housing secured through the outline section 106, although it is the applicant's intention to deliver 100% affordable housing. It's just 30% that was weighed in the balance. There's a mix of dwelling sizes to meet local needs. So primarily 2 and 3 beds with a couple of 1 and 4 beds. There's on-site provision of public open space totaling 0.32 hectares and a local equipped area of play. There's off-site highway works to improve pedestrian connections into the village. That includes a footpath from the site entrance to St Michael's Close, a crossing point, and also the implementation of the travel plan that was secured at outline stage. So the biodiversity net gain of the provision for the development exceeds 10%, despite there being no BNG legislation requirement on this application. There's mitigation measures proposed for protected sites and species, including a lighting scheme for bats, a landscape and ecological management plan, and wildlife protection and enhancement scheme. Cycle and electric vehicle parking for all dwellings, as well as sustainable measures such as air source heat pumps and solar panels. And more details of the heat pumps and solar panels is recommended as a condition. There's a comprehensive surface water drainage strategy, and also financial contributions towards secured at the outline. So over 260,000 towards local primary schools, over £20,462 towards a multi-use games area within 5 miles of the development, and the same amount towards an off-site local equipped area for play within 5 miles. So overall, officers consider that the harm identified is not considered to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme. So the officer recommendation is therefore to approve the scheme in accordance with the conditions detailed at the end of the committee report. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. It's a comprehensive presentation from yourself, and as you can see there, the papers are well have taken some time for all of us to read and digest. We have a number of speakers on this item now. First of all, we have Dr. Simon Farnsworth, who's a local resident. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. So the one following, so you can be prepared, is Amanda Taylor. So, Dr. Farnsworthy, I think you're going to be advised 30 seconds before, and then you'll be told when your time is up. So welcome this afternoon, and time starts when you're ready.
Thank you and good afternoon. Stoke is a small village with limited services and very narrow lanes. There's another site in the village for new houses in the local plan. Villagers fiercely resist this development, so much so that at outline stage, 59 objected out of 61 public comments. We're paying a heavy price for something which is not wanted. It's a bolt-on high-density urban development outside the village envelope on a steeply sloping site where parking standards cannot be met, built on an exposed ridge in modern artificial materials. I know you've got a difficult task today. I just ask that you try to achieve a better compromise. I have 3 objections. Firstly, planning creep. The proposed houses are mostly on an elevated ridge, only descending the field towards Mill Lane, where it's less steep. This damages the amenity of the adjoining residents of St Michael's Close. It also encroaches on the buildings around the Grade 2 listed Stoke Mill. At appeal, the inspector approves the outline application subject to the proposed houses moving further up the hill. This was done for the first set of revised drawings, but now the developers brought the houses back down the hill again. This means that our listed buildings will be compromised and the amenity of all those adjacent to the site will be damaged. Secondly, freshwater drainage. Runoff from the site is expected to enter a culvert and then a stream at the foot of Parkman's Hill. This is not simply a culvert under a quiet lane. It's part of a 40-metre long historic mill leat. Most of it runs under the garden of the mill. Any damage to that culvert could cause a blockage, with water backing up, risking flooding to all the properties in the valley bottom. There's a better solution for runoff to enter the stream further to the northeast. Thirdly, sewerage. It's proposed that sewerage from the site will go directly to the pumping station on Parkman's Hill. But the existing pipes taking waste away from the pumping station won't be increased in size. The pipes can't cope with the existing volumes. There's a manhole cover in the garden at the mill and it leaks. Nasty materials all over the property. To conclude, this speculative development might help the council achieve its house building targets, but it comes at huge cost to the residents of our village, and I urge you to press for more work to be done to get a better compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Farnsworth. Now moving to Amanda Taylor, followed by Simon Collins. Again, you'll be advised thank you. You may start when you're ready.
Good afternoon. At the last planning board meeting, it was refreshing to hear members say that planning is all about people. The reserved matters in front of us give very little regard to either the existing or new people of Stoke St Michael. This development was unpopular from the start due to the difficult topography and its impact on neighbouring properties. 45 houses crammed into a small area of a large site create unacceptable densities and just come across as being the most cost-effective solution for the developers to deal with the steep slopes and ridges. Most of the properties in neighbouring St Michael's Close are bungalows. Window-to-window distances fall within acceptable guidelines. However, 2-storey houses on a steep slope will back onto bungalows. This will have a huge impact on privacy and totally overshadowing existing homes. The shortfall of 20.5 parking spaces highlighted by the case officer is a conservative estimate and exacerbated by tandem parking. Parking cannot be accommodated elsewhere in a village with very few pavements. On-street parking already forces pedestrians into the road, with large HGVs passing just inches away. It is simply not responsible to add to this issue. The site is large, so there's absolutely no need for a shortfall in parking. Again, we can only surmise the layout is driven by financial viability. The children's play area is at best a token gesture, poorly equipped and poorly sited, encouraging children to play in the lowest part of what is a very wet field. There is a public footpath alongside behind high hedges into woods, plus a waterway with steep banks nearby, raising security and safety issues. The notion that houses have been moved closer to offer a watchful eye is ridiculous. The Designing Out Crime Officer shares our concerns over the siting. It should be more integrated into the site layout. The housing mix is poor. Where are the units are suitable for accessible or retirement living? Just one tiny ground floor flat is indicated. Single floor units along the edge of the development bordering St Michael's Place would mitigate the impact of development on neighbouring residents. We also question whether a rural village with very limited prospects of employment and a poor public transport system is the best choice for 100% social housing development. The case officer suggests that the choice of materials are acceptable based on the financial viability of the development. It is outrageous to suggest that the people of the historic village of Stoke St Michael should accept this. Residents spent considerable time producing the village design statement to preserve the future character of the village, which is predominantly natural rubble stone, and there's no shortage of stone in the vicinity. To summarise, Stoke St Michael deserves better than the proposed reserve matters in front of you, where the only winners appear to be the developers. Their plans are clearly led by the financial burden of building on such a tricky topographic site. The harm to the village and its people heavily outweigh the benefits of this application, and for this reason we ask the board to refuse these reserved matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Taylor. We now move on to Sam Collins, followed by Councillor Handley.
Good afternoon. I wish to object to the design of the development, in particular the parking provision. It should be noted that Stoke St Michael is a small village with very limited public transport connections. Due to travel times, it's almost impossible to travel to and from work by bus. For this reason, car ownership in the village is already very high. Due to the development being compressed into the top half of the field, the density of the houses is much higher than anywhere else in the village. For the same reason, the proposed parking provision is inadequate, which will lead to clogged and congested roads in the development, which will spill over onto the adjoining streets. The end result will be unsightly and obstructive parking on pavements, front gardens, and any other available space. Access for emergency vehicles may be restricted. For example, Tadley Acres in Shepton Mallet, where parking provision is inadequate, has suffered from this in the past, where fire engines could not get access in an emergency. The planning officer has already stated that there is a shortfall of 20 parking spaces. That means that based on the average length of cars, approximately 90 linear metres of additional parking space will need to be found either on the development's roads or more likely outside. Many parking spaces are in long bays, which will surely lead to neighbourly disputes where there is already insufficient parking. Those spaces not in bays are mainly tandem spaces, which are frequently not used as intended. In fact, the Designing Out Crime Officer consultation report states the use of tandem parking spaces has increased on the amended layout. Although this may mean the parking provisions meet the number of spaces required by the council, which it doesn't, as I detailed previously, it's often seen on modern developments that residents are often reluctant to move vehicles around to access the front vehicle and therefore will often park one on the road. Vehicles can then be parked inappropriately, which will lead to neighbourly disputes, antisocial behaviour and alike. Village roads already struggle with a shortfall in street parking, and Colpit Lane, on which the development is sited, is a narrow country lane. There is no space for on-street parking there without causing major disruption to the flow of traffic and obstructing the walking route to our primary school. Additionally, Somerset Highways, in their response to this application, state on-street parking should be avoided to prevent unnecessary hazards to visually impaired pedestrians. To avoid an unattractive and antagonistic parking situation, the development needs a significant redesign to contain parking in a realistic, sympathetic and cohesive way. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We then now move on to Councillor Handley, followed by, I've got Fran Topazio. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Right, Councillor Handley.
Good afternoon. 3 years ago, to the huge disappointment of the parish council and many of our residents, outline permission for 47 dwellings was granted by the planning inspector. He concluded that there were no matters that would indicate that the development should be prevented and that any remaining issues could be addressed at the reserved matters stage. 3 years on, we don't consider these remaining issues to have been addressed satisfactorily by the proposals in front of us. I just want to highlight the following. Firstly, the overriding question, site layout and density. The reduction in the number of dwellings from 47 approved to the 45 already demonstrates the difficulties afforded by the space available in this steeply sloping site. Accommodating the 45 dwellings has only been achieved by extending further towards the heritage access to the bottom of the field, thereby reducing the green buffer areas and by significantly reducing the parking provision. A net housing density of 34 dwellings per hectare is well above the 30 dwelling guideline for rural areas. Insufficient credence has been given to the issue of overlooking onto neighbouring properties. The report states window to window distance is acceptable. However, in reality, the topography and the height of the properties will undoubtedly overshadow the single story properties in St Michael's Close. These issues could easily be addressed by a reduction in the number of dwellings. The proposals impact further on the village's rural character by reliance on the use of generic materials, including artificial slate and reconstituted stone, ignoring guidance in the village design statement to utilise locally sourced natural materials wherever possible. And as we've heard, serious concerns remain over the proposed schemes for surface water drainage and the handling of foul water. We have no confidence in the statement made by Wessex that there have been no reported sewage flooding incidents since 2021. Finally, it's important to note that neither a construction management plan nor a construction environment management plan have been submitted at reserved matter stage. Both the outline permission requires that both are submitted and approved prior to the commencement of development. And whilst we understand that this is dealt through a later discharge of condition processes, we consider this unreasonable. Given the ecological sensitivity of the site, the proximity of residential properties and the known difficulties and restrictions on the movement of heavy construction traffic through the village, too many unresolved questions remain at this decision-making stage. Residents and the parish council have made clear that they wish to understand these construction impacts before work begins, as they will affect the entire village throughout the build process. So in conclusion, we believe this scheme in its current form introduces harm to the local character and heritage of the village, has an unacceptable impact on surrounding dwellings, presents a significant issue with a shortfall of parking provision, leaves unresolved issues with regard to drainage and flood risk, and leaves too many unanswered questions about the impact on the village during construction. We ask that permission is refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henley. We now move on to the applicant and the representative, Fran Topazio. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Fran Topazio, speaking on behalf of Curo, a not-for-profit housing association that is proud to own and manage 14,000 affordable homes locally. We're seeking your support for this application. The principle of the residential development has already been established through the outline planning, and this reserved matters scheme has been shaped through collaborative engagement with your officers over many months. Our proposal is for a 100% affordable scheme, comprising of 34 social rented and 11 shared ownership homes. This is in a direct response to acute housing need in Somerset East, with over 3,000 people registered in needing a home and 141 applicants in the Stoke St Michael and nearby villages. Behind each of these numbers is a family, a person, someone trying to build a stable life. We're anticipating over 4.4 million Homes England grant funding to help deliver this much needed housing, bringing with it local economic benefit through construction jobs and household spending. Social rents will be set at 60% of local market rents, ensuring they remain affordable for families. We're also working closely with Somerset Council to ensure the local people benefit first and preparing a local lettings plan that will be tailored to this development. Throughout the planning process, we've worked together with officers to refine the scheme. We have reduced the homes to 45, lowering the density and increasing public open space, particularly in the southeast corner, to enhance overall space for the nearby listed buildings. Your planning officer has recommended the scheme for approval in response to these enhancements. Our approach to parking has agreed an appropriate balance of design and consideration, whilst also prioritising practical, usable spaces rather than garages, which are rarely used for cars, and this has been accepted by your officers. All homes adopt a fabric-first approach to minimise energy demand and reduce residents' bills, so air source heat pumps and roof-mounted solar panels will provide sustainable, effective heating and electricity. The scheme also exceeds biodiversity net gain requirements. Finally, I want to emphasise that Cura is not just a developer, we're a long-term landlord. We take pride in managing our homes responsibly, carrying out regular inspections to ensure that properties and open spaces remain safe and cared for and well maintained for years to come. We respectfully ask that you grant permission in accordance with the officer's recommendations. In summary, the application delivers the right homes in the right place for those who need them most, while bringing significant investment and long-term benefits to Stoke St Michael.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, that's the end of the speakers in front of us. Do the officers want to respond to anything initially?
Just one point of clarification, please, Chair. In our presentation, we made reference to the planning obligations that were secured at outline stage. Those planning obligations were made by way of a unilateral undertaking, which included the education contributions as referenced in the PowerPoint presentation. However, at the appeal for the outline permission, our education team confirmed that there was no requirement for the education contributions, and therefore in the appeal decision, the inspector confirmed that despite the education contributions being included in the unilateral undertaking section 106 agreement, that requirement for education would not need to be paid. So that's just something that members need to keep in mind in their considerations.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Can I just remind members that this is a reserved matter application. It's not a principle of the development on the site, and I think we just need to make sure we are clear on that. What I would like to do, because there is a significant amount of technical information that I think we need to be quite clear when we make any statements or comments. But if you've got a specific question of the nature, technical nature of the application, then you make it clear so that we have a succinct response from the officers on those matters, if at all possible. So we have nobody from no local member asking to speak, but I am aware that there are people who live or are part of the community. And I will start with, and I first see Barry, who would like to make a comment, and anyone else at this stage? And then Rob and Helen. Yep, I'd like to start making a list. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Firstly, Philip is not here, but I have a written statement by him which he has asked me to read to the committee. So before I do my bit, I will read Philip's note. Good afternoon, Chair, members and officers. I'm sorry not to be with you this afternoon, but I've been unwell, in hospital and now on dialysis. However, I'm feeling better, but on a dialysis day today. This application has been around a long time, in fact, since 2018. I fought with the parish council and got it refused at then Mendip district, and again fought against at the appeal. Outline planning was allowed at the appeal. I did not agree with the decision. However, we must move on and deal with what is in front of us today. Having looked at the reserved matters, I would like to point out the following. 1. Materials. All materials should fit with Stoke St Michael design build statement, i.e. Mendip stone, matching roof materials, etc. This could be sorted by members and officers. 2. Construction management plan. This is very important as the site is on a narrow rural lane, Coal Pit Lane. and also near the village school entrance. I would welcome a restriction on hours of lorry movements, i.e. 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, hours of work, and also weekend hours, if any. 3, I believe there could be evidence regards privacy, light and overlooking. There are guidelines, but this would be above my pay grade. 4, I am also concerned around the parking facilities and would question the planning officer's calculations. 5, I do have concerns regarding the nearest to the houses to the heritage and ecological features at the bottom of the site to the east. 6, he says, is it too close to the mineral site, bracket stone quarry, which I believe is only dormant and not yet classified as disused. Thank you for your time. Kind regards, Philip. Those are Philip's comments. Mine, we seem to be creeping up with the density of the development. I understand that an accepted development for rural developments is 30 houses to 30 dwellings to the hectare. We seem to have crept up to 34 here. Although I believe the inspector, when he made his decision, he intimated that this could be reassessed at the reserve matters stage. So we would have an option in line with the planning appeal to reduce the number of houses to make it more acceptable. The gardens are the usual scratty little gardens. So those of us who were here this morning heard that we are only producing 40% of our own food. And it looks like from reports that we have that figure is going to have something done to it, and we're going to have to produce more of our own food. And with the gardens that we've got on these properties in Stoke St Michael, that is never going to happen. They're going to put the sheds up, they're going to put the conservatories up, fill it with kids' toys. There's nothing going to be grown up there of any use whatsoever. And I, in line with my usual request, can we remove all the permitted development rights on this site when it does finally get built out? Parking, the planners have weighed the balance. I'm not too sure what the weighing the balance means. Highways have got doubts about the number of parking bays. People have already noted that we don't have enough parking spaces, and yet that seems to be okay. Well, we have rules for reasons, and if we're not going to listen to them, let's not have them. But of course, the answer again is we could make the parking spaces right. We make less houses, and then we've got room to get the parking in, and everybody will be content. Number 4, construction plan. This is of interest to me because I went through a site that was being developed on Thursday last week. It's near Keynsham, and it took me nearly an hour to do 3 miles because a development was taking place that was blocking the road. Now, that could have been signposted 3 miles in advance, and I could have done a detour, and I could have saved myself a lot of time on the journey. But this is affecting people every day, twice a day. And who was the developer? Curo Developments. And it does seem to me that once they got their permission, really, are they bothered about what goes on in Stoke St Michael? And I would like to see restrictions on lorry movements, cleaning the roads, car parking of people working on the site, and all the usual things that are going to interfere with the amenity of the people who live in Stoke now. And I don't see why they should have to put up with parking, inconvenience, to say the least, just so that this development can go ahead. Financial contributions that are being made, I mean, we've just seen that one is being withdrawn. I just question whether they're index linked in the case that it takes a long time to build this out. Are we going to be fixed at 120,000 contribute? I can't remember what it was for now, it doesn't matter. 120,000 contribution if this takes 10 years to build? Sorry.
Just to say that the contributions were in the 106, which was confirmed at the time of approval from the planning inspector. So I don't think we can amend that 106 at this stage.
So the answer to the question is no. Right, okay, thank you. And in conclusion, this outline is for up to 45 houses. That's not a target. It's up to. It could be 20, it could be 30, it could be 40. And we could make a much better development there. And it's not what are we doing to make a development this year and next year. Surely we want something that Somerset are going to be proud of in 20 years' time, so that we can go up and say this is a really good example of a site where you've got plenty of room, you can move around, and there's plenty of air and plenty of space for everybody to do what they want to do. And just in conclusion, I would say if you look at the estates that were built in the 70s and compare them to the estates that are being built today, there's much more room to get around, and they're much more spacious, and they're really much more pleasant places to live in than trying to get as much in as you can.
So shall we ask the officer for comments about one, is there a pre-commencement condition which we could put in place for construction management plan? What are you proposing on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can come back in order, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I've
fine,
made some
that's
notes, quite a
helpful.
few things to come back on. First, in relation to Councillor Ham's points, in terms of the materials, we recognise that the village design statement does encourage the use of natural stone where possible. In this instance, this is not what's before us. Materials are a mix of buff brick and recon stone. We still think that that's a good quality of material, and we'd also note that in Stoke St Michael there are quite a mix of materials exhibited in the village. We think that the materials proposed here are still of good standard, and would note also that the final spec of materials would still be secured by a condition post confirmation of permission, if that's what members decide to do today. In terms of the construction management plan, that is a condition secured against the outline. So just as normal practice, we would secure things like vehicle movements for construction traffic as part of that. On point 3 of Councillor Ham's comments, privacy light and overlooking. I mean, as you'll have seen, we've assessed overlooking all the kind of amenity issues, and our advice to members today is we don't think there are any significant amenity issues. Parking's obviously come up, comments from both Councillor Clark and Councillor Ham. In terms of this, you know, what we've got is an appeal, an outline appeal, which grants permission for up to 47 dwellings. You know, when you've got an appeal that says up to, it's not anything from 1 to 47. You know, it's got to be in that general ballpark of 47 dwellings. So the principle for, you know, in the ballpark of 47 dwellings has been established on this site. It is a sloping site, which makes accommodating that level of development more challenging, but we are to some extent stuck with that general quantum of development. Now, what officers have sought to do is bring the overall level of development down from 47 to 45 through our negotiations. And we think we've achieved a compromise position, which is we admit that it's a parking provision that is below what is recommended in the Somerset parking strategy. It's not a rule, it's a recommendation. And we've balanced that against what we think is a better design response in terms of having more street trees, as you've seen in the presentation, larger rear gardens, less parking along the frontages. And we think this represents a good compromise position. In terms of the housing down in the southern end of the development closer to the listed buildings, the current layout is actually further away than the indicative layout at outline stage, and we can show that if members want to look at the 3 layouts at indicative outline as proposed and now. In terms of the stone quarry and the minerals consideration, that was Councillor Ham's 6th point. Again, this application already has outline consent, so the principle has been established. So this point is not something for consideration now. And then moving on to points that Councillor Clark raised, 30 dwellings per hectare. I mean, again, there's no rule in terms of that being a maximum, and the inspector was fully aware that 47 dwellings were being proposed at that time, or up to 47. So again, that has been established, and as I mentioned, we've already brought the number down from 47 to 45 dwellings. In terms of garden sizes, again, when the application came in originally, which is the middle layout on the slide there, we did have more triple tandem spaces, which particularly on that sort of run on the eastern side that kind of goes around the corner, we've removed quite a lot of third spaces there, and that has in turn resulted in larger garden sizes. There's no minimum requirement for sizes for gardens. So again, we haven't identified that as a reason for refusal. In terms of weighing in the planning balance, I mean, really, I've touched on it already in terms of the parking. We recognise that, you know, this is not 100% perfect planning application, but rarely will you come across one that's already perfect. We think this represents a good compromise. And the construction, yeah, I've already mentioned the construction management plan. And just finally, in terms of contributions, yes, that indexing, they are indexed. So indexing is secured already as a term in the Section 106 through the outline. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you, that's helpful. Barry, you content your questions have been answered?
Well, they have been answered, yes.
Good.
That gardens have been made a little bit bigger, and we have moved away from the listed buildings, but only minuscule, Ross. I mean, we've not moved up yet. Technically, we've moved further away and the gardens are bigger, but it's quite unsatisfactory, the whole thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll move now to Rob Reid, and then after that it will be Helen and then Alistair. Rob? Martin.
No, we're away. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got a query and a concern. My query, one of the speakers said when this went to appeal, the inspector said it had to go up the hill, but it's come back again. Can we get the comment from the officer what he thinks he means from that? And my concern is the effects it has on the listed buildings. I don't know if we can get the map up again to see how close the listed buildings are to it. Because one is obviously an old mill with a mill stream. And we have a mill stream in Evercreech which gets flooded very easily. So I'm just concerned about the drainage, which was brought up by a member of the one of the speakers, and where the drainage goes from here. Does it all go through the mill stream? If so, that could be quite dodgy. Or if it does, can we move it? Over to you.
Thanks, Councillor Reid. In terms of the first question, in relation to the listed buildings and proximity, so I can read the passage from the appeal decision that relates to this. I mean, essentially, the inspector was already looking at the layout on the left there. And just to recap, on the image on the left, we can see the sort of southernmost house, and then we've got a bit of green space, and you've got a couple of grey buildings sort of running south, west, north, east. So that's the closest listed building there. So that's the sort of separation distance we're talking about. So when the inspector had that layout in front of him, which was indicative, he said the proposed residential development would be within the setting of the Grade 2 listed Mill Cottage and Stoke Mill, which lie just outside the southeastern boundary of the site. historically their setting would have been particularly rural before the expansion of the village. The fields to which the houses are proposed to be developed would further change the character with more urbanisation of the area, which I would regard as being part of the setting of these listed buildings. However, there is already housing within this setting, and there is a significant separation distance between the listed buildings and the nearest proposed houses. Furthermore, suitable landscaping could preserve the setting of the listed buildings to some extent, along with positioning proposed houses as far from these heritage assets as possible within the site. So he's not saying that the houses, on my reading, need to go further away. He's assessed that layout there and he's saying it's okay. And if you compare to, the right hand one, it's further away already. So I don't see any requirement that means the houses need to be pushed even further up the hill. So that's my response on that point. In terms of the drainage, I'm not a drainage specialist. We've had Wessex Water have commented, the LLFA as well. They are your specialists, and we don't have any objections from either. There'll be some further detailed work that would happen post permission, which is normal in terms of surface water. So a new surface water drainage scheme or a more detailed surface water drainage scheme would need to be submitted, which the LLFA would need to sign off on. And yeah, I think that's basically all to say on that one.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to Helen.
Okay, thank you. Gosh, there's a lot. First of all, with regard to the drainage, I'll just add that quite often the LLFA will sign off on something, but actually local people sometimes know better than the LLFA. And if they're saying that there's quite a lot of floods down there and the sewage there has been sewage coming out since 2021 and the pipe needs to be looked at, I do wonder if we just need to double check on all that. I think there's quite a lot of good things about this. It's got air source heat pumps, solar panels. It exceeds biodiversity net gain. There's an ambition for 100% affordable housing, and even a local lettings plan. We've had over 2,000 homes built in Frome, possible homes discussed in Frome, not all built out yet. We can't get a local lettings plan. This is good. You've got a local lettings plan. However, I still have a lot of concerns as well. So I went yesterday afternoon at about 4 o'clock. It was getting dark, about 3:30, to look at this site in the rain. And as I came into the village, I did notice the very dark stone. I've even had a look at the geology map, and I can see that why the village design statement says what it does about the stone. All of the paler buildings are on the edges of the village, and they've been built afterwards. So I can understand where the parish are coming from on that. And I do wonder if we need to have another look at that with the materials, if we can. I then tried to go up to the site, up Coldpit Lane, I think it's called, and I was met with, I had aggressive drivers behind me and coming down the hill. It was quite often very narrow. I had to go around parked vehicles, and then as I got up to the site, it opened out. And where the access road is going to go in is actually one of the widest bits. If you then go straight on, it narrows into a very tiny lane with passing places. I'm incredulous actually as to why this got outline planning permission, but it has. And so we have to work with the situation that we're in. I think that I'd like to support Councillor Ham's proposal that the construction management plan and the construction environment management plan, I'm not sure which is which, that the lorry movements are restricted, and also that if we could somehow get some kind of one-way system where the lorries come in one way and go up the hill, or come in the other way and go down the hill, that needs to be that needs to be, when it comes in,
it doesn't automatically go out for consultation. You will have some people that have got alert systems on their planning portal, and they will notice it. But I think it does need to go to Councillor Ham and for Councillor Clark, please, to also be consulted automatically, and the parish, so that they get to be consulted on that, because I think that's pretty important. And quite often we end up putting the cart before the horse here because of the way planning works. We can give permission without knowing certain things, and then what if it just doesn't work? You know, what if I mean, 2 lorries will not be able to pass each other, and I've also got this problem in Frome. They will not be able to pass each other. That really needs to be very carefully thought about, which way those lorries are routed. I think given I don't have the same reservations about parking as some of the other people, because especially if it is 100% affordable housing, I think historically the affordable people who live in affordable housing have a lesser they have fewer cars per household, so I think we might be all right on that, but it is taking a chance on it. We don't know for sure, and I am very concerned that we haven't really put enough money into active travel. It seems to me, I haven't seen the section 106, but we've got a pavement, and we're being told we've got a pavement being provided for pedestrian use from the access road to the beginning of St Michael's Close. That's about 20 yards. I mean, it's not a big deal, really. It goes past the bungalow, which, by the way, on the corner of St Michael's Close is for sale. I mean, I really feel sorry for those people, but that is not really a big distance. That bit of pavement that we're being told is a good bonus for us, and I'm just wondering how we're going to try to get people to walk to the shop when you've got these having to dodge traffic already that's going far too fast down the lanes. And whether or not any of the Section 106 money is going to support this public transport, which we're told we've got poor public transport. Is there actually any money at all going to improve the public transport so that we can have buses that actually go to places where people want to go? Presumably that'll be Frome, Shepton Mallet and Radstock, at times that they want to go there in the mornings and evenings and can come back. Have we got any money for that, or is the Section 106 fixed and we can't do anything about that? Because if we're not going to give people enough parking, because it may be that we only do get 30% affordable housing, the other 70% may be private, in which case there is going to be a problem with parking spaces. How are we going to encourage people to, take more sustainable transport options? I do have other questions, Councillor Wyke, but I'll leave it at that because that's quite a lot already. And I'd like it if you could come back to me later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to respond to any of her queries?
Yes, please, Chair. In terms of active travel, so Councillor Cades mentioned the footway improvements. So yes, there are some footway improvements from the proposed access that kind of go round the corner to link the proposed development to the existing village, if you like. We're aware that there are missing pavements throughout the village. But all planning obligations, and this has already been dealt with at outline, need to be proportionate, fairly related to the development that's proposed. So unfortunately, we can't expect this development to fix all of the active travel deficiencies that exist in the current in the village as is existing. The other active travel benefit that we secured, or that was secured through the outline, is a travel plan. So that's got various measures within the travel plan that aim to make the development as sustainable as it can be, noting its location.
Can you give me some examples of what might be in there?
It can be things like green travel vouchers. It can be noting what are the bus services available, so that new residents can make the best choices for themselves. I mean, again, it is a village location. It's not in the centre of Frome, so it is what it is. The development should be as sustainable as it can be based on its location. I mean, just a note also, Councillor Kay, just in terms of the connectivity to the rest of the village, it's not just along Colpit Lane. You've got the other route where you can go down along Mill Lane, which is a quieter route to walk in. In terms of the construction management plan, I mean, that has already been secured at outline stage. There's a specific requirement for routes of construction vehicles. In terms of discharge of reserve of conditions, that's normally something that's dealt with by officers in line with the Constitution. So I think we should think carefully about trying to, bring reserve discharge of conditions applications back to members.
Can I ask, does that already include a one-way system? Have you looked at that?
It has. It's not specific about what the route would be. It just says the routes need.
Well, can you bear it? Could the officers bear it in mind, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Can do that. Yeah.
So what about the fact about the is it you have to just do what the statutory consultees tell you, even if local people are saying, look, there's a problem here with this culvert, and look, there's a problem here with this foul drainage. Are you saying that there's no that cannot be taken into account?
It all must be taken into account, and it is taken into account. Our difficulty, if you like, is as officers, if we do not follow the advice of our technical specialists and are, lead ourselves, if you like, or we base our comments on maybe comments from members of the public that are contrary to what our specialists are saying, and that goes to appeal, which is likely, we will almost certainly get costs against us for that kind of behaviour. So that's the reason.
Thank you for that. Just total clarity, the construction management plan, which I recognise is one which has been secured, will that be a pre-commencement condition, i.e. you will have that in place prior to any development?
Yes, that is pre-commencement.
Great, thank you for that. The second question, if I may, trying to support what you're saying, is that I do appreciate that there are gaps in the footpaths around the village. However, just looking at the overall contribution of this development to the community, it's going to be probably 150 plus additional people in the community. And one of the things I would like to see, and it's not just about this planning application, is the concept that there should be some community gain, and therefore you may not fill all the holes in the footpath system, but you could actually say X number of yards of footpath could be contributed. It just seems to me that when we're seeing the gains, and I recognise that this is already within the 106, so in many ways it isn't pertaining to this, but I will just say that I do think we need to look in a broader sense about community benefit, because all the benefits go to education or whatever, and the community should get a gain out of it. And though you can say, well, it's got X number of new people and it will be contribute to the vibrancy of the village and all those things, I do think we need to think about material gain, and one of them is getting an improvement in the footpaths within the village. An example, having just paid an awful lot of money to get about 20 yards of footpath in my community, where the parish council had to pay for every single penny of it into the thousands. It's quite significant that small amounts of footpath are a benefit. Anyway, I jumped in. Forgive me, Alistair next.
Thank you, Chair, members of the public. The question I have is not really a technical one, it's more an observation, to be honest. I thought I saw on the screen, when the screens were up, it said something like a leak stroke mugger within 5 miles or up to 5 miles. That's what I think I saw. Correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm sure I've got this totally off key. Is the rules around that, not that if they build more than 10 houses, they have to have at least a lap, but possibly a leap anyway, within something like 50 metres or something like that? Is that correct or not correct?
Yes, so what you're quoting from there, Councillor, is the Fields in Trust guidance. The Fields in Trust produce guidance, which we in turn refer to through our own policy, so that we've got a policy on open space, and we've got a supplementary planning document, and that then refers to Fields in Trust guidance. There was a 2020 version of the Fields in Trust guidance. It's been updated more recently in 2024. So the planning obligations would have been based on the previous version, but essentially you're correct. There is a requirement for each of these various pieces of play equipment, leaps, laps, within a particular distance from the development. I'm not sure of them all off the top of my head, but they're all secured already. And in terms of the two pieces you quoted, the section 106, yes, refers to within 5 miles or the local area. So essentially Somerset Council has discretion as to where to spend that money. In terms of the Mugger multi-user games area, they're often quite expensive pieces of kit, so we've got a bit more discretion as to where that is spent. But the lap would normally be as,
okay,
that'll be close to the
just
site.
come back to that.
Go on.
To ask for a complete Mugger, I understand that's too much money for the sake of 40 odd houses. But then again, if you're saying if this 5 mile thing sticks in my head, that's outside the village and long gone. So would they, if they built the 40 houses or whatever it is, 44 houses, would they be expected to have at least a lap within the guidelines, or a leap at best?
Yeah, so there's an on-site leap.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I now have Martin Dimery, followed by Simon.
Thank you very much. An observation, really, to start with. Listening to all the objections, the problems, I accept there's some good arguments there. But what I would like to say is that we spend a lot of time in this committee considering applications that come in where affordable homes, social housing, is limited to 30%, and actually developers are trying to reel back on that. It's really refreshing to see a developer that's come in and is prepared to put up houses at 100% affordable or rental. I think that's something we should encourage. I'd like to echo what Councillor Kay said about the use of air source heating and solar as well. Again, it doesn't have to be provided, but it is. And I think that's another good thing. One question I have is that some of us had a meeting, thanks to Councillor Clark, with Matt Wheeldon of Wessex Water, and I see they're going to some lengths to deal with the wastewater, which will mostly be rainwater, will mostly be coming off the roads and the roofs. And he said to us, actually, if everybody had water butts attached to their houses, their drain pipes, we wouldn't need all this extra provision, because most of what falls from the sky comes off the roof and ends up in the drains. Has there ever been any consideration to including that in our more sustainable policies?
Thank you, Councillor Dimery. I'll take that last point first, because that's the easiest one. So yes, there is a condition on the outline that secures water butts. More generally, we've got a policy, DP7, which seeks the maximisation of various sustainability measures. So normally we have a condition that requires water butts to be added. I just wanted to, just a point of, just so that members are completely clear in terms of their considerations of this application and where they're placing, the planning balance. The applicant is Curo, and they are a registered housing provider, and they have stated in their application that they intend to deliver this application as 100% affordable housing. Members just need to keep in mind that the Section 106 only secures 30% affordable housing, as is compliant with the policy. So you just need to be mindful of that when you make your decision. Thank you.
May I? Yeah, in other words, we should encourage 100%, but we would hope not to be chipped down on that.
Can I make a political point here? I have no reason to believe that we will have a chip down on this. This is not the track record we've seen so far on that particular applicant.
Just wanted it on record. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I've declared it too. Right, we now move on to Simon and then Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's quite a quick question. Section 106 monies, you stated there's about 260,000 going to education locally, but you also stated that it's not required. So is that £260,000 not going to be allocated, or can it be allocated to some of the local needs, such as pavements or something else?
That's not going to be allocated, I'm afraid. That won't be, that we can't seek that anymore.
Thank you, Simon. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this isn't obviously a discussion about housing or not. And what we've been encouraged and told today is to pay attention to local plans, development plans, with all the caveats that we know. So this does, and listen to our experts. So this then creates a concern and a confusion, because in this case, one of the plans is the local design plan, and the materials. It seems like it's a great opportunity to use some of the wonderful materials that we have in the area, and the stone, and it seems a shame. And I think the point made about, well, other houses haven't done that, I think, well, that's why that you should definitely be sticking to the design plan, because we know it's like when we go to a place and you see where higgledy-piggledy housing just doesn't suit the area. So just because it's happened before doesn't mean we should continue. But I do take the point that you say you like the standard of the materials that are being offered. But I think that if we're not arguing about housing or not, we're arguing about the details and the materials. So I think that we really should pay close attention to the village design plan and try to look at those materials and try harder on that. The second point is listening to the consultees and the experts. How many times have we been told that as a committee? But we're not listening to the highways about parking. And we've been the other side of that argument, haven't we? Where we've said we don't agree with the highways expertise, but this time it's the officers are saying it. So that creates for me a confusion. What's to stop local people taking this to appeal? Because that's the thing. That's the argument we get back. If we don't agree with our statutory consultees, we're told, well, in an appeal, we're not going to be strong. So really, the public could take that point. So then my views on it is apart from the appearance of it, is the lanes. I have had a family live in Stoke St Michael. No, there's a lot of traffic goes through there because of the industries. There's no. We know that the rural areas suffer because of public transport. Affordable housing and cars. People still need to get to work. So they will need cars. I don't think, I can't see that there will be less need for cars. Sustainable transport doesn't seem to really be given the priority it needs. I think it needs. Just feels like we're missing an opportunity here, because we're not discussing housing or not, and it's affordable housing. That's a great opportunity, but we could get this right. And I think this planning application I won't forget for a long time, because it is all about the details, and we're moving away from the local plan on design, and we're moving away from the consultee in our own expert. So I will remember this one. So can we not look at this again And can we not? Can you not look at this again? Can we not try harder with it to get these things a bit closer to the design plan and the transport feedback from our transport experts, car allocation experts? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sully. Just to give you a bit more background on the materials, the applicant did engage in pre-app. We did advise in line with the village design statement about the materials. We did say that it would be preferable to have natural stone. I would note as well in the village design statement, it says traditional materials sourced locally should be encouraged, e.g. local rubble stonework or local timber cladding. We have encouraged it. As you all know, it is your duty to assess the application that you have before you. This is what the applicant has decided to propose. We've advised on materials. They've heard that, and this is what they've presented. They will have more information, the applicant, on the viability of the scheme, what they can afford. Obviously, natural materials are generally more expensive, so they've obviously got competing factors to weigh in as well, and the design response is what they've chosen to based on all the factors before them. Our assessment is that we think it's acceptable. You may not agree, and that's obviously a question for you. Just in terms of the parking, I mean, it's not that we don't. We're just throwing the parking standards in the bin. We've had regard to it. We're aware that it's under provision, but I think it goes back to the point that I was making, and the case officers made as well. This is an application that got outline consent for up to 47, and what we've tried to achieve here is a compromise position, and the parking has given a bit. But every house still has 2 parking spaces as a minimum, and there are unallocated visitor spaces which are above the normal requirement for this size of development as well. So we think in the round this is a scheme that you should be able to support. That's our view.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back? I would like members to consider whether we don't ask that it's deferred and that they go back to looking at natural stone materials and look at the advice on car parking. But I don't want to be the only one, I would like to hear further support on that. We're putting it forward. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I take that not as a proposal at the moment, but to hear what other people have to say. I've got another 2 speakers. Can I just interject specifically around materials? Because my community have had a long discussion about neighbourhood plan and very aware that every time you state you want natural materials, it's more mining, digging up extracting stone out of the Mendips. And it's particularly in some communities where you're looking for a specific colour of stone, you've got spent quarries. So in many ways, to actually access the material is often quite detrimental to the environment and the landscape. I'm not saying on this case, but I'm just giving you an alternative point of view on that. And the other thing I'd just like to pick up on, you talked about affordable housing and they probably need less rather than more cars. I'll just make an observation. I've got statistics around car activity during COVID and post-COVID in the affordable housing in a local community, and it's actually higher because your key workers live there, the ones who go out there and run your recycling centres, your nurses, whatever in the affordable housing. So don't assume. And the other thing is that you've got the trend now to get workers to take their company van home at night because they haven't got space to store it on the commercial site. And so in many affordable housing areas, you'll see a number of company vans which are required to go home with the worker. So I don't think you can assume one way or the other with affordable housing. My
It's
apologies, but-
something I've read that is the case in my ward where we've got an old council estate with lower numbers of of cars.
Okay, we've got two more speakers. My apologies for intervening there. Dawn and then Adam, and I would then really like to pull this together. And Helen, you did ask to speak and come back. If you can do so briefly, then yes. So, Dawn.
Thank you. I'm just concerned about on page 12 of the application, it makes reference to if it is not possible to construct the estate road to a standard suitable for adoption. Why would it not be possible to do that? Because I have an estate in my division that's taken 14 years to get to that level. And I just wonder why we can't just make the developer build something that is to the standard that Somerset Council would adopt.
Thank you, Councillor Denton. We do have highways online, if I don't quite cover this, but not all roads are adopted. And I assume that comment, which would have been from highways, is covering that eventuality. So if in order for a road to be adopted, it needs to meet a suitable standard as specified by the Highways Authority. But it's possible for the road to remain as a private road if that's not the case. So I think that's just covering those two eventualities. I don't know if we can get any further comments on that from Highways colleagues.
Good afternoon, committee. Adam Garland here. Can you just indicate that you can hear me okay?
Fine, we can hear you. Thank you, Adam, for coming through.
Okay, so yeah, just on the adoption matter there, the thing is, the decision as to whether or not to adopt a new estate road is purely voluntary on both the part of the Highway Authority and the developer. They don't have to put it forward for adoption, and at which point there should be some form of clauses in their Section 106 agreement to secure maintenance of the roads in perpetuity. But if they do submit a request for a Section 38 agreement for us to adopt it as highway, if the quality of the road, the construction, the geometry, the gradients, whatever, if they don't accord with current adoptable standards, the Highway Authority don't have to adopt it. So I hope that clarifies that situation.
Thank you, that's helpful. Any other highways requests since we have Adam online? No. Dawn?
Yeah, so in this instance, do we have any S106 agreement or, sorry, I don't know, I'll hold it there. Is there any agreement for this to be adopted? Because it just says if it is not possible. And I'm just curious as to why it would not be possible. And are they agreeing to do it? Are they not agreeing? And then just what would be the plans for the future? Would it be the residents, obviously not the residents, but the owners of the property that would look after those? Because it makes it a very much more expensive proposition to have a house and be responsible for the road outside the house. So, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so at the present moment, because the ultimate layout, design of the roads, the footways and all of that has not been granted planning permission under this Reserved Matters application, we won't be currently in the processes of getting a Section 38 adoption agreement up and running. At the point where planning permission is finally granted for the Reserved Matters, if the developer then wishes to liaise with us over adoption, they will then apply for the 38 agreement at that time. But currently nothing will be going through that legislative process at the minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Adam and Helen, and then we're definitely calling it a halt to the discussion.
Thank
Adam?
you, Chair. I mean, obviously this is details we're looking at to some extent. There's a lot going for it. There's a lot of affordable housing at stake here, and we need to encourage that. As Councillor Dimmery said, there's an affordability in housing crisis in this region. We need to not forget that as well. And there's lots of sustainability measures in this proposal as well, and linked to footpaths. But it can't do everything. But I've got a couple of concerns. Obviously, materials, and I kind of agree with Councillor Sully about can materials be reviewed further. Obviously, there's an outline planning condition on materials. Does that give officers any ability to increase the use of? Thanks. Does that give officers any discretion in approving details that are in front of us, or not, or is this it? And the location of the local area for play was commented on by the design out crime officer, and they've got more concerns than the version they saw previously. So, but that's not, I don't think, referred to in the report, but it's the LEAP. Maybe it's the same thing in reality. Is there any further ability to move that place for children's play, which was commented on adversely by the design out crime officer, or is this it? Because I don't think that's been addressed in the.
So the designing out crime officer comments that are on there, they actually relate to a previous round of amendments. So that we didn't get updated comments from them, unfortunately, but they had primarily had concerns not about the location, but the lack of sort of natural surveillance from the properties. So since their comments, we've taken out a couple of, well, not taken them out, relocated a couple of trees so that some of the housing that surrounds that open space area can have some natural surveillance over that area just for security reasons. Yeah, so their comment is slightly out of date based on the plans that we have now. Yeah.
Thanks. And the other one was about materials and the ability to have any discretion from now on.
Just on the materials then, so the condition is really there to secure, the exact brick. So if they say we're going to put red brick on this house, then that condition goes, oh, it's going to be the, whichever supplier and whichever model of brick. So that's, we can't really go, oh, we'll have natural stone everything instead. It's got to be in line with what is being specified in the materials plan that's been submitted in the Reserve Matters application. And I mean, just to give this application a fair run, because we've talked about materials, it does consist of, so in terms of what it says for the stone, it is recon stone, but it's so natural, light, weathered, tumbled, random recon stone. And then a natural light mortar. That's one of the main walling materials. And then the other one is brick. So buff or grey / buff brick. So with a light natural mortar. So we've got control over, which recon stone they use, which buff brick, which grey brick they use. But also just to flag, there are window dressings, so it's got cast stone chamfered window dressings. So that's a sort of recon stone around many of the windows. There are brick details along soldier courses and coins as well. So we're not dealing with a sort of bog standard approach to design. It's not your Rolls Royce perhaps, but it's somewhere. It's certainly, in our view, above the bar of what we think is good design.
Thank you. I was just wondering about how we can make this a bit better, because clearly there's enough residents here who've objected, and it's been imposed on the community at the appeal, despite the district councils and the parish council's objections, and it's being imposed upon them again now. So what can we do that's going to be a bit more acceptable to local residents, but in line with planning policy? That's the question for us, isn't it? Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. That's an interesting challenge. I've got Helen, and then I think Simon Trafford wants to have a word too.
Yes, thank you. Something we haven't touched on yet, which is that on the satellite image at the beginning, you showed that there was the red line area. I don't know if you can get it up again. The red line area, and then there's an area also owned by the developer with blue line. Can you get that picture up? Yeah, satellite image. And you said that the bit to the sort of north and east of them, where the buildings are going to be, is where the biodiversity net gain is going to be. Except it looked to me from the satellite image that that's already woodland. And you said there's going to be a line of trees and then some grassland there. It surely cannot be proposed that we chop down some woods in order to get grassland there. And I'm just wondering, that's just sort of, it just did not compute in my mind. So I just wanted clarification on that. Going on to the landscape plan, when I went yesterday, I noticed that there was a kind of a hedgerow between the St Michael's Close and the development, and there were quite a lot of mature trees in there. And then on the landscape plan, it shows the root protection zone. And the gardens of numbers 40 to 44 that are proposed to be built out actually go back into, some of them go back into that hedgerow and the root protection zone. So I'd like to support Barry Clark's suggestion about removal of permitted development rights for slightly different reasons, because I want to make sure that we don't go into the root protection zone along that southern edge there. There is actually, where you've got those distances, there are some trees there. Now, you showed a cross section across there as well, and it appeared to have a building on a sort of a ridge. I don't know if you said, if I missed you saying that there were going to be sheds or something like that, but I actually really do feel that, particularly along that southern edge, that we should have a removal of permitted development rights so that people can't build sheds or offices at the bottom of the garden and start building trenches with, for electricity cables or whatever, and then disturb that hedgerow and that root protection zone down there. So I'm just wondering if I need to propose that as an amendment or an extra condition. And I'm not sure whether we should do it for the whole lot or whether it should just be on that southern side. I'm sort of open to debate on that. And secondly, I'd like to support this idea that we do try and make it as best as it can be with regard to the village design statement. And somebody also raised the issue about the mix of housing. Is it sufficient? Have we got sufficient housing for older people? Have we got lifetime homes, for example, doorways that are big enough for wheelchairs, that sort of thing? And I am moving towards the idea that that Councillor Sully suggested that maybe we should ask for a deferral for a month or two to just see if the developer can come back and look at some of these issues that we've raised today and see if they can address them. But if you could answer the question specifically about the biodiversity net gain area and that bottom edge there, whether it's possible to remove permitted development rights along that bottom edge.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Kay. This plan doesn't quite show it, but it's good enough, I think. So the sort of white area there to the east in that sort of triangular area, that's part of the... So can you get that one up? Sorry, we're just going to get a better plan up so I can talk about it a bit more easily.
But the satellite image showed it as woodland.
Yeah, so you've got a triple SI, which is off-site and outside the blue land as well, which is, so on this plan, the triple SI is to the northeast, so not in the green area, it's further off. And when this was at outline stage, that was one of the key considerations, the impact of the site on that triple SI, because you've got back commuting and stuff like that. And one of the mitigations that is secured is, I think it's termed ecological enhancement, and that is this. So the dark green is new woodland to be planted and hedgerow, that sort of backwards J shape. And then the light green is improved meadow land, I think. So this is all the ecological mitigation land, and that includes biodiversity net gain
Oh,
as
is
well.
that currently farmland then? Have I misunderstood?
Yeah, this is all just
Okay,
an,
I've misunderstood.
an undeveloped field currently. So that there's no sort of the red line, the red land and the blue land. You can't distinguish between the two. There's no boundary there currently.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. All right, thank you.
In terms of root protection zones and that run of properties along the southeast. So an arboricultural assessment has been submitted with the application, and that identified that there wasn't an issue in that area. It is, of course, within members' gift to propose that this application be approved, subject to the removal of particular permitted development rights to particular properties. I wouldn't advise a blanket removal, but along the run that you refer to, if you've got a specific concern in terms of sheds or offices, you could that is within members' gift. And in terms of lifetime homes, the council currently doesn't have any of the optional technical standards adopted. So just to give you a bit of background, there are a number of optional technical standards, they're called, some of which apply to things like lifetime homes, and it works through the building regs. So the standard is, a normal house just meets standard building regs. Then there's a grade up, M42 it's called, and you get slightly wider corridors and slightly larger bathrooms, that kind of thing. And then you have M43, which is a fully wheelchair accessible house. But in order to require those, they need to be adopted as part of planning policy. So we don't have any of those adopted, so we can't require them. So the standard is the standard building regs, essentially.
Chair, can I come back about an amendment, please? Yeah. Well,
your final intervention, please.
Yes. Well, I knew you'd say that. So I'd like to propose that we do not allow. Also, bearing in mind, I forgot to say that what some of the people said about overlooking along that southern edge, overlooking St Michael's Close. I think it's even more important that we don't have any sheds or extensions, because there might be some two-storey extensions going out, because that will just add to that sense. Even if it's not, even if there's a distance that is acceptable in planning terms, there's going to be a sense of overlooking because it's on a hill. So I do think that we, just along that southern boundary, if that's okay, I'd like to propose that we that we take away permitted development rights on that southern boundary for two reasons, which is the root protection zone and in order not to increase the mass of buildings overlooking St Michael's Close. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is I would like to support Claire if she's going to put the proposal that we defer this and hope that Curo come back, having listened to what we said today, with better finishes, surface finishes, with looking at parking again, perhaps taking in mind what you said. Am I putting forward a proposal? This is two different things. Let's do the first one first. Yeah.
It is a proposal, but can I just finish? There is just one more person on the list to speak, including an officer. I just want to say something myself about materials, as I've been involved in the neighbourhood plan and also, as I mentioned, the discussions around using natural material. And I'm really concerned that in the neighbourhood plan, you're often talking about looking at the village as a whole, and you really do want to have houses sometimes sitting side by side where the materials shouldn't jar, that it should be materials which are appropriate. And other parts of the village, materials may be, if you've got a modern housing estate with a layout and everything, referring back to the materials in the conservation part of the village or the old part of the village, it can look odd. And I'm reminded of the housing on the Wookey Hole Road coming out of Wells, where in the middle of a modern estate, we've got thatched modern houses, looking absolutely ludicrous in the middle of it all. And I think we just need to be mindful of making sure that when you've got a neighbourhood plan, does it apply to every bit within the parish, or does it apply to appropriate places? And I wonder if the officer could just read out again the neighbourhood plan's point about materials.
Certainly, Chair. Yes, so it's just to clarify, it's a village design statement rather than a neighbourhood plan. So that just means it has less weight, actually. In terms of materials, it says traditional materials sourced locally should be encouraged, e.g. Local rubble, stonework or local timber cladding. Larger developments should display a variety of different materials and not be standardized national housing types. So I think they're trying to get rid of that, so get away from the cookie cutter response, but it also recognizes that larger developments are not, 200-year-old buildings, so we're not going to get natural stone for everything.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'll ask Simon to make a comment, and then we'll go to the proposal from Helen Kay first.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Ros. Maybe you've had a really interesting long discussion about the proposal, and you've identified the materials. Again, I think as Ed's sort of advised you, it isn't a basic scheme design, and he's pointed out some of the architectural elements that will be built into the properties. So again, I think your starting point isn't that you've got a 2 out of 10 scheme here and you've got to consider it 2 out of 10 on design. We say you've got at least a 7 out of 10. And yeah, the materials aren't from a natural palette, but again, that doesn't mean to say that that's not acceptable. I think the other point that you've had a lot of debate on, and you're quite right to have it, is about the car parking. But again, we've got a design here that delivers at least 2 spaces per dwelling. So it's not that the proposals don't include car parking provision. You've heard that the units are the smaller size, so they're largely 2-3 bedrooms. So again, it's not that you're considering an application for 44-bed units where, yeah, there might be a real need to maximise the car parking provision. Each dwelling will have 2 off-highway car parking spaces, and you've heard that there'll be increased amount of visitor car parking, which again can go to providing any overspill requirements. The issue that you've got, and it's the issue that we've had as officers, is it's about placemaking. Do you want an estate which is dominated by tarmac and car parking areas, or do you want an estate that has got reasonable sized back gardens, has got some soft planting in front of the front edge of the units? That's the dilemma that we've had, and we felt that actually minimum of 2 car parking spaces per dwelling with that softer landscaped estate feel is a scheme that we can support. You've had a lot of debate about the Section 106 provisions and about whether or not we can improve the connectivity through new pavement connections. And unfortunately, we can't. We're not considering that. So when you're considering how to balance the reserve matters in terms of the siting, the design, and the appearance, those aren't matters that you can consider. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can we now go to your proposal? And you've got 2 in front of us.
No, I'm just going to go for the one, and then because I'm I want to get a sense of, just want to get this through, the amendment, which is to remove permitted development rights for those houses that border St Michael's Close, so that their back gardens are not built over. And I don't know if you need reasoning around the mass. I don't want to increase the mass of housing and the overbearing impact on the current residents, but I also want to protect the root protection zones of the hedgerow.
Okay, thank you, Helen. We'll need a seconder, but meanwhile, Ed.
Yes, I just wanted to provide a bit more clarity around that. So that would be removing permitted development rights under classes A and E for properties 34 to 44 inclusive, which are the ones that you identified, just so that we've got that. And we can, the reasons we can sort out, you know, we've got your reasons already, so that's fine.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for this proposal?
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. Yes, is that a proposal, or is it? Or sorry, are you saying we refer it back with that condition?
No,
because that's what you originally said.
It's a proposal.
It's a proposal.
It's a proposal if it was to go through today. So we're doing it before we vote on the final yes or no.
If the proposal is that we accept with the condition that has just been outlined, then I will second it.
That is not what's being put in front of us. All we're being asked for is an amendment, is my understanding, a condition on the proposed application in front of us.
It's a condition, I think.
I think procedurally, Councillor Kay, you would need to propose that the application is granted in line with officer recommendation, with the exception that the condition that you suggest. Otherwise, isn't it just a sort of hypothetical?
Sorry, I have to take issue with you, and Leslie may wish to come in. We've done this before, where I've asked for a condition on to have solar panels on properties should the committee decide to approve it, and that's what I'm asking today. I'm asking for an extra condition to have removal of permitted development rights from numbers 34 to 44 if or should the committee approves it. So I think we can do it first.
Can we have some advice on this? Do you need to think about it?
Chair, could I just have
Yes, surely. We'll wait on that.
Got a wife.
Helen, I'm not in any way questioning your willingness to. Okay, fine. Simon, can you confirm between yourself and Leslie what is the legal procedure here? But we're looking for a.
Yeah, well, I think obviously, Councillor Kay, you're suggesting an additional condition should the members approve the application, so you can vote on that basis. If the members approve the application and they approved your motion for a further condition, then yes, vote now. But if the officer recommendation falls away, then your motion to add a condition is meaningless. So.
Can I just ask if why the legal advice had to be in a room? Isn't it something that should be open to us all?
Our view of how Councillor Kay's request would work in terms of the process for making decisions on applications.
Yeah, but it'd be good. But that could be open, couldn't it? That kind of just seems.
This is an open meeting, and the legal advice that was given is privileged.
Okay, I'm not going to, at this point, you've made a good point, Claire, and we'll talk about it as a separate issue, but at this moment in time, I just want clarity. Can we take the proposal from Councillor Kay as is, that if the officer recommendation is approved, then this is an additional element to it, but so it can be held separately. Okay, let's move on then. Can I have go to a vote, Claire, and I need a seconder. And this is going to be purely about adding an additional condition if the main substantive motion is passed.
Proposed by myself, and then Martin said he'd second it, or Barry. Yeah. I think Barry put his hand up first, actually. Yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you. Now, do I need to repeat what we're voting on or not? I think we are, yes? Yep, we are voting purely on the proposal that the south side of the site, the houses 4454, I think is the number, have their PD rights removed for root protection and also for the privacy of that line of housing associated with the adjoining properties.
I think if Ed could just confirm the actual properties that we're talking about.
Yeah, so just to confirm, that's numbers 34 to 44 inclusive, and the proposed condition is to remove permitted development rights under classes A, E for those properties.
Thank you for the clarity. Could I have a show of hands then? Who is in favour of the proposal?
6, 7, 8, 9.
So for the record, we have 9, 10. 10. Could have any against and any abstentions?
2.
And 2 abstentions. Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the substantive motion, which is to and could I have a proposal from somewhere to either approve or not the recommendations of the officer with the relevant thing?
Martin and Martin.
I am happy to support the recommendation that we go in line with the office recommendation, obviously in the context of what we've just voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Love.
Sorry, voting to approve, yes, thank you.
Yeah, voting for approval. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'd second that. I think we've heard a big debate. I think the office has gone a long way to placating some of the worries that people in the room have got. We're never going to have a perfect issue. We're never going to have a perfect development, but I think they've gone some way. We've got a condition on it, and I suggest I will support Martin's proposal.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. So we have a proposal in terms of Councillor Lovell, seconder, Councillor Dimery, to approve the proposal from approve the reserve matters proposal as we see as per the officer recommendation.
With
the additional condition. My apologies. Yes, with the could I have a show of hands, please? Penny in in support? Any against? One against and any abstentions? And one abstention. Great. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. I think that's been, as Councillor Dimmery said, a very fulsome discussion of all the elements of a reserve matter. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Can I, given the time, yeah, we're going to do it. Can I suggest that we take a break now and then we'll come back? And could it be 15:15? Because I would really like to move this forward, but no later. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Helen. Right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Planning East. And we now move on to item 7 on the agenda. And this is planning application 2025/0276. And I'll ask the officer, Ros Eastman, to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for outline planning permission for 35 new homes in Beckington. The site is located at the northeast of Beckington and borders the A36 to its east. Hopefully you can see the purple line on this slide outlining the conservation area with the application site sitting to the northeast of the village hub of Beckington. So the site abuts but is not within the conservation area. This image shows that the site is currently undeveloped with generally pretty strongly vegetated boundaries. The application is submitted in outline with access only, submitted for approval at this stage. And the plan on the screen here identifies that the amount of development proposed within the application can be accommodated within the site. It shows that there's also room within the site for a pumping station, space for sustainable drainage systems, and also for open space across the site. Because of the proximity of the site to the A36, there's likely to be a need for acoustic mitigation in the site to deliver a quality environment for future residents. And the applicant team submitted these cross-section drawings to demonstrate that even allowing for National Highways operational requirements, there's space within the site for landscape treatment on either side of any acoustic barrier, as well as good physical separation between any barriers and new homes. The site is proposed to be accessed from the north, as indicated by the red arrow on this slide. And from the south, this Google Street View extract notes the current site access where it's possible to have an active travel connection from Goose Street. And condition 16 in the recommendations identifies that details of this should be required prior to commencement of development, but we would expect to see that as part of any reserve matters application. So having an access at the southern end, ideally ped cycle access, but as a minimum of pedestrian access will increase the permeability of the site and its integration into the village to allow good access to facilities in the village for new residents and vice versa. So members will recall considering another application in Beckington over the summer, and this is covered in the officer's report, but members refused that application for 3 reasons relating to the level of growth in Beckington, heritage harm and impact on the wastewater treatment works. Members may also be aware of another application in Beckington on land off Bath Road that was refused permission on appeal on design grounds, effectively, where the inspector was clear that reduced weight should be attributed to the specific housing numbers in the local plan, CP2 numbers, in light of the housing land supply position in Somerset. And that's covered in more detail in the officer's report. So in relation to heritage harm, the Conservation Officer on this application has indicated that the proposal would cause less than substantial harm to heritage assets. And in my view, that would be at the lower end of less than substantial harm, and careful site design at the reserve matters stage would ensure that that's minimised. So balancing that less than substantial harm against the public benefits of the proposal officers are of the clear view that the harm is significantly outweighed. Finally, in relation to foul and surface water disposal, I want to draw members' attention to conditions 5 to 9 as set out in the report, and particularly condition 9. Condition 9 is a pre-commencement condition that requires confirmation of the specification and operation of the foul water pumping station, and also provision of foul water storage during storm events between the date of this permission and the completion of upgrade works at Beckington Wastewater Treatment Works. So the officer recommendation is therefore one of approval subject to conditions and a Section 106 obligation being completed to secure necessary mitigation and policy compliance. So that would include 30% affordable housing, including 1 unit to M43 standards, as was being discussed in relation to the previous application, diversity net gain, contributions towards health infrastructure, education, the upgrading of the roundabout just off the site, and the delivery of open space. So, and again, it's worth noting that the recommendation in your report includes indexation for all of those contributions from the date of committee. That's the end of my slides, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. We'll now move on to a number of speakers from the community. And the first one this afternoon is Dr. Andrew Tyler. And I have been asked to read his statement. While I'm happy to read these statements, I will make 2 comments. One is the 3 minutes still applies to anyone I do. And secondly, I hope to read them fast enough. But at the end of a long day, I apologise if I don't get it right. Dr. Andrew Tyler has said, I appreciate the opportunity to make the statement. You have received comprehensive correspondence from me last weekend related to the key issues of inadequate wastewater infrastructure leading to housing developments in Beckenham, contaminating the nearby designated bathing water sewage. It also refutes the view put forward by the planning officer on the matter. On the 1st of July, this committee refused permission for Cotswold Homes development in Beckington, substantially on the grounds that wastewater generated by the development would add to the demonstrable impact of Beckington Wastewater Treatment Works is having on the designated bathing water at Farley Hungerford. At the 1st of July committee, the meeting the senior planning officer agreed that the issue was a relevant planning consideration and recognised that it is proven there is direct connection between national planning policy guidance that holds the same status as the NPFF and the 2017 water environment regulations. This linkage unambiguously connects the impact of new housing developments in Beckington on the designated bathing water at Farley Hungerford. A report by Dr. Tyler submitted to this committee, very clear and beyond reasonably doubt, demonstrated the sewage discharges from Beckington and Road are significantly responsible for polluting the designated bathing water at Farley Hungerford. The legal view was bolstered by a judgment of Jenny Wigley KC that a sewage discharges from a proposed development would be a material consideration in planning determination, and that the development should be prevented from proceeding or being occupied before a satisfactory solution is found. Put very simply, no such satisfactory solution has been found, and the treatment work is not planned to receive an upgrade before 2035. In the meantime, the application before you will add sewage and potentially rainwater runoff into the main sewer, and therefore add to the load of the Beckenham treatment works. This will directly add additional load into the River Frome during times of high rainfall, which will further pollute the Farley Hungerford bathing water. With their Cotswold Homes determination on the 1st of July, this committee rightly concluded they could not, in good conscience, permit a development that demonstratively risked the health of swimmers at a designated bathing water. The situation with the application before you today is identical. So I would urge you to refuse this application until such time that a satisfactory solution to the sewage discharge is found and implemented that does not involve any additional flow to the Beckenham treatment works. It's a legally defensible position and the right one. Okay, I got there within 3 minutes. Good. We now move on to Ben Richards, and I believe this is being read by Clive Winterbourne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. So I'm reading this on behalf of Ben Richards, who is the Secretary of the Beckington Parish Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group. And this is a report. The Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group provided updates on our progress and details of emerging findings to the Planning Committee in May and July this year. Thank you for the opportunity to update you further as you consider this planning application. As you know, our neighbourhood plan will cover the period that coincides with the emerging Somerset local plan, so it's out to 2040. We are well advanced with the development of our neighbourhood plan, expecting to be ready to submit for Regulation 14 examination by the end of this year. Since July, we have completed a character assessment drawing on the Beckington Conservation Area appraisal conducted in 2010 and the Design and Guidance Codes reports produced by ACOM in 2024. We have also received reports from external consultants on landscape value, views and local green space. Our draft vision, objectives and policies have been assessed by ACOM under the local evidence base and policy development technical package. We have also shared our draft vision, objectives and policies with your planning officers. The observations and advice received will assist in the production of the draft plan for consultation under the Regulation 14 process. We have requested and are still awaiting confirmation of number of houses that Beckington will be allocated under the emerging plan. We were informed that a confirmed allocation would be known in the spring of this year once the council has completed its work, and we were advised that this would be September. But I believe we're still waiting for this. You will remember that in March and April this year, following the receipt of the LPA's indicative number, we conducted a resident site survey to gather views on where housing development might occur. We included 5 potential sites based on a call for sites exercise, all in the east or north of the village and outstanding the existing development boundary, outside the boundary. This included the site that you are considering today, and that was ranked 4th out of 5 in order of preference by residents responding to our survey. In June, we requested expert comment from the LPA Development Management, Environmental Health, Landscape Ecology, Arboriculturalist and Highway officers for 2 sites adjacent to the A36, including this one, and 1 further site to the north of the village to inform our own recommendation as to whether it might be suitable for inclusion in the neighbourhood plan. In August, we also asked for advice on SEA and HRA screening, and we have yet to receive comment on these 3 sites. We were informed that other work needs to be prioritised. On the 7th of October, we received advice from the planning team that the site selection will need to be finalised and a draft neighbourhood plan submitted before the screening can be carried out. We are aware that there is an awaiting decision from the Secretary of State on the Selwood Garden Community application. We fully recognise that further dwellings may be required in Beckington, but we believe that this should be plan-led, and we ask for this to be refused at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I now believe we are expecting you to make a comment in your name.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Clive Winterbourne, the 3rd generation of a farming family in Beckington. You've met me before, I'm sure. My property is at the northern end of the village, and I use these roads all the time in cars and sometimes with heavy machinery. I know that one of the key decisions to be made today at this stage is that of access, and this is where I want to raise my safety concerns. The proposal would add a junction to Bath Road in an area that is already complex and would add to the number of cars and delivery vehicles trying to make turns in a busy area. Crash map data may show very few collisions recorded in this area, but you only have to stand and watch to see the near misses and last minute avoiding actions happening all the time. The BP station serves the busy A36 and is one of only two between Bath and Salisbury. Traffic coming off the A36 to use the services and then rejoin the highway has to cross over traffic going up and down Bath Road to the village. Drivers who are completely unfamiliar with the area are interacting with locals who know the roads well. Human nature means that everyone is in a hurry and not necessarily paying attention to what is happening around them. The traffic data in the assessment shows that nearly half of the traffic on Bath Road in each direction to the site exceeds 30 miles per hour in that limit, whilst 15% is well over 35, which is above that limit. So these photos show how close together these junctions would be. So the first picture I've got, driving out of Beckington Village, there is restricted parking on the right-hand side. You can see the white line. You can see the roundabout and the road speed sign in the distance. Picture number 2, this is the same view showing Little Duns Close and the BP service station entrance with a proposed new access squeezed in between. Number 3, looking in the opposite direction, this car is a typical position leaving BP. Number 4, and here you see the location of the proposed new access between the service station and Little Duns. Number 5, this is to make the point that it's not only cars but also heavy goods vehicles coming in and out, totally obscuring the view along Bath Road. Number 6. In this photo, I'm standing about on the centre line of the proposed new access road. The distance between here and the centre line of the BP station access is only 27 metres, which is a very short distance. From my point of view, this proposed new road squeezed in alongside additional vehicle movement is simply adding further potential hazards to road users, cyclists and pedestrians. My comments so far are based on the roads as they are laid out now. We know that there is a plan that if the Selwood Garden Village goes ahead, the developer will pay towards modifications to the roundabout. There are preliminary drawings out, but until the decisions are actually made and the plans finalised, nobody knows what the final configuration will be or how it will affect the flow of traffic in the vicinity of the proposed new access road. I think that the new access as proposed is unsafe and unacceptable, and believe that the decision on this outline planning application should at least be deferred until the decision on the Selwood Garden community is made and the plans for the roundabout are finalised. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed for that, Mr. Winterbourne. We now move on to another local resident, Mr. Millett, and I have his statement in front of me. It's even longer than the previous one I read out, and it is in quite some detail. So while I'll read it out and try and keep it within the 3 minutes, I'm sure if anybody wants to see it after I can willingly pass it round. The proposed planning can be split up for planning decisions. Area 70 metres from the central line of the dual carriageway. Southern area from the boundary of Six Goose Warmead Farm line upwards to the ridge to the line with Cotswold Homes Development Open Space and the building line boundary. This leaves an area along the west side hedge and 70-metre line. Last is the entrance within 60 metres of a roundabout, and building plans have been sought and have been rejected. The outline planning is considering the whole field with housing proposed on the whole available site. Any planning in Beckington of 70 metres from the carriageway has been no housing. Carriageway built from 60 metres from Warmead Farm and 68 Goose Street. Travelodge entrance 60 metres away and off Warminster Road, Fuller Rise and Wool Close nearest houses are 60 metres from the road verge. To build, you will need to reduce road noise and vehicle pollution inside and outside the properties measured with a sound meter. Indicative layout looks too close to the carriageway. Using Google Maps, this appears to be the same planning decision by a carriageway. Bristol Ring Road is the nearest example. Using the topographical survey data from north to south along the carriageway to the bridge, road height rises smoothly by 1 metre. Field height is also 1 metre from the road surface and the bund is 0 to 2 metres. Hedge up to 3 metres. Indicative housing would approach roof ridge height of 10 metres above the road surface and 7 metres north end to 5 metres. This view facing towards the petrol station does not support the proposal. Field height 82 metres. Travel Lodge and Costa Coffee, eaves height 85 metres, ridge 88 metres and 87. A clearance of housing 91 metres, 6 metres over the ridge 3 metres and 4 metres. 80 roundabout surface level. I'm not sure. Anyway, 79 metres. Housing shall be 12 metres higher, maybe a lamppost height above the roundabout. The southern area has several precedents to bear in mind. 1, all housing built up from Goose Street should be no higher than the roof ridge of the house on Goose Street. Note 2024-1865 objection. Warmead Farm is a bungalow following this rule of 80 years of planning. Cotswold Home site had to incorporate an open space with visual soft planting, 50 metres last property line, which forms a ridge between Goose Street Rising and the ground flattening towards Trowbridge Road. This ridge runs in straight line from Telegraph Pole in the carriageway hedge to Cotswold Homes on the edge of the conservation boundary. And I still have quite a significant amount. Forgive me, this is terribly technical and doesn't make an awful lot of sense to easily read it. I will finish it off by saying, in terms of the elevated view, one standing in 63 Goose Street Garden, you're 1.5 metres below the ridge height, field ridge height, and over 9-foot stone wall and Goose Garden. So obviously concerns there. Come the full planning application with all matters reserved, giving detailed case officer based 80 years of consistent planning decisions has to be rejected. The Heritage Office perhaps only saw scrub before reporting. M7 planning indicative layout is a copy of the same built estate in Weston-super-Mare and Gloucester Way. They know the heights of the housing. 3 authorities in this outline planning process, owner, M7 planning / OG group and the case officer, have not asked what measures could be taken to deal with the objections covering 63 Goose Street property. He's indicating there is evidence he has shared with the caseworkers on the decision, and he's got some photographs to be shared. And he notes there's no topographical survey or recent planning to support their request. In the accordance with the spirit of the outline planning, giving guidance to smooth out the full planning process, the planning committee should note all proposals more or less shall follow the existing decisions. M7 planning photographs, it appears, sole weight for the caseworker's recommendation. Whilst matters reserved may not be considered, the outline process is getting full planning right. Final
Probably
planning.
Been about a minute over now, Ross.
I know, and I haven't read it all. No. Final planning may be considered for some of the site. I will pass this round. I'm sorry, it's not very comprehensible to read it fully. If anyone wants to share it, my apologies for that, but done my best, I think, in that. We'll move now on to the representative from the Parish Council, Tessa Hampton.
Thank you, Chair. I am Tessa Hamden from Context Planning, and I speak today on behalf of who object to this proposal. Beckington has experienced growth well beyond what was planned for it in the local plan. Beckington's target was approximately 55 dwellings, yet more than 110 homes have been delivered. The inspector dealing with a recent Tower Hill appeal at Beckington concluded that the local plan strategic policy CP1 and CP2 reflects the NPPF's approach to the proportionate distribution of housing. On this basis, she attached significant weight to the principle of these policies. The same must apply here. Whilst the proposed contributions for GP expansion early years are noted, it has not been evidence that the local facilities have the land to expand or the ability to increase their capacity, even with a financial contribution. The site is open countryside and forms part of the rural setting of Beckington. The site has undeveloped character and makes a vital contribution to the village's rural edge. The scheme would introduce a suburban form of development, including an engineered access and acoustic fence barrier along the A36. This is not a sensitive extension to the village. It represents a harmful encroachment into the countryside and would negatively change the character of Beckington in its rural setting. Whilst we've just seen a section in the officer presentation, the committee report advises that the screening on the A36 side cannot necessarily be secured due to National Highways access maintenance requirements. The proximity of the A36 fundamentally shapes the development. Dominant close-bordered acoustic fencing is proposed simply to make the site habitable. If homes can only function behind barriers, then the suitability of the site must be questioned. The mitigation itself becomes part of the harm. The proposed layout indicates overdevelopment. Due to the quantum of development, any future scheme would be dominated by roads, parking and fencing, with green spaces pushed to the margin. The committee report suggests that off-plot parking has design benefits, but we would disagree. This means cars dominate the public realm. The open space is sloping, fragmented, or adjacent to the noisy A36. It is not meaningful, functional, or attractive space. The committee report gives weight to the inclusion of a footpath connection towards Goose Street to the south of the site, but no evidence has been provided that this can be secured, and it's understood that this crosses third-party land to the very south. There is also an unresolved ecological issue. The site forms part of a bat commuting corridor linked to the Mells Valley Sack. Lighting must be limited to protect bats, but this will be an issue at the long, narrow access into the site, which will be required to be well lit. Wastewater capacity is now discussed as a material planning consideration. Independent evidence has been heard from Dr. Tyler, which has demonstrated that local infrastructure is operating beyond capacity with regular sewer overflows in the River Frome. Proposed Condition 9 provides no guarantee of a solution. There is no detailed scheme and no agreement with Wessex Water, who would need to be part of the improvements. A condition cannot reasonably be discharged. A condition that cannot reasonably be discharged is not mitigation. Members have previously refused applications in Beckington on this basis, and there is no reason to reach a different conclusion now. On balance, the harms are clear: disproportionate growth, permanent landscape harm, unacceptable noise mitigation, poor layout, ecological conflict, and unresolved wastewater constraints. These significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefit of housing delivery in this location. We therefore urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And our final speaker today is Andy Shepley, the OG Group and the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure members have read in detail the officer's report, which sets out very clearly the reasons for recommending approval. Whilst the applicant fully endorses the officer's report, I'd like to emphasise some key points. I'd firstly highlight the reference the officer made to the recent appeal on land at Tower Hill Farm. Here, the inspector gave reduced weight to the impact of additional housing numbers at Beckington, primarily due to the council's very poor housing land supply position. The same principle applies with this proposal. With regard to drainage, the applicant is acutely aware of the concern members and local residents have regarding foul water drainage, in particular overflow events from the local treatment works and subsequent impacts on water quality in the River Frome. However, as has been made clearly stated in the officer's report, the proposed development will not make such overflow events materially worse or more likely to occur. It also needs to be stressed that surcharging is regulated by other legislation and is the responsibility of Wessex Water in this area. Importantly, and as highlighted within paragraph 201 of the NPPF, planning decisions should assume that these regimes will operate effectively. This has been highlighted to members previously, including in relation to the nearby development at Great Duns Close. Applicants in that case instructed a planning barrister to advise on this very subject. In particular, they advised that concerns as to whether or not a statutory consultee will do what is legally required should not be used as a reason for refusal. Therefore, members should only be considering whether this development is acceptable in relation to its impact on foul and surface water drainage. The LLFA has been consulted on this application and has advised that the drainage strategy for the development is acceptable subject to the imposition of conditions. I'd also emphasise that the applicant has agreed to provide additional overflow storage within the application site, along with overflow monitoring technology within the on-site pumping station. This will further assist with flow controls during storm events. and more information will be provided and agreed with the LPA in due course as part of a detailed foul drainage scheme. All of this, combined with the planned improvements at the treatment works, means that drainage is not an issue that should cast any doubt on the acceptability of this application. Finally, it's worth referring again to the Council's housing and land supply position, which at 2.84 years remains very poor. Members cannot continue to ignore this significant issue, and this committee's response must be to approve sustainable development such as the proposed to help address this acute shortfall. This is clearly an acceptable site for residential development in principle, and all outstanding matters relating to design, landscaping, noise attenuation, drainage, etc. can be adequately dealt with at reserve matters stage. There are no objections to this development from any other statutory consultees, including highways. In conclusion, members should fully accept the clear expert advice provided by their officers and statutory consultees and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, do the officers want to respond to anything so far? Ooh.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I do. The only point I will make at the moment, sorry, I'm contradicting myself now. The accesses, Mr. Winterbourne highlighted the access at the top of the site, and we do have highways here if the conversation gets to that point. But just to confirm that they have been really clear with me that they have looked at whether or not they think the access arrangement is safe and is appropriate, and they're content that it is. So from an officer perspective, the technical specialist advice that we're receiving is that the access is fine as it's proposed. If we do need any more specificity on that point, we can get the highways guys involved in due course, but I just wanted to flag that one now. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, who would like to kick off the questions and seeking insurance on this one? Adam?
Thank you. I'll raise it on me and Dawn, I think, with this one. Thank you. Yeah, I do note, thanks for the report and the discussion. What's wrong with you? Is that better? Is that okay? Is that okay? Oh. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. So I note this site is not an adopted site. It's next to the settlement boundaries, not been proposed previously development. Beckington is a primary village that is suitable for new housing, but it's got a neighbourhood plan that's coming and not there yet, and possibly could allocate this site for development in future if it goes through and if it goes ahead, if the numbers are what we think they might be, that needs to accommodate. So it's a bit debatable. And I know Beckington's had over 200% now of its local plan minimum allocation so far. So there's reasons why the parish council and residents are arguing that we shouldn't have more development in Beckington because it's overdevelopment. And the neighbouring site has had a refusal at committee as well for one. That was one of the reasons. So I'm sort of more concerned whether if we could get highways advice about the safety, which was raised by the parish council, that would be great. I've got less concerns now about the sewage impact of this development than I had the last one, because this one has a storage tank which is proposed to delay issuing its effluent to the sewage works in the event of a storm, and that would I think mitigate and avoid an impact on water quality, because in dry flows without storm flows that the sewage works can cope, but it's when it rains or when there's groundwater that's affecting the treatment capacity, the capacity to treat sewage work. That's when the problem is. So if this development avoids increasing the problem, you can't refuse it on those grounds. You can't refuse it on an existing problem. But I suppose my main concern is noise, because this hasn't been developed before. I think it's largely because of the loud noise coming from the road, the A36, next to the site. And I know there's a condition, and there's no objection from environmental protection, and there's a condition saying that a strategy should be submitted to achieve the recommendations in the noise report submitted by the applicant. But there's no real detail about what that would be. I said that I know there's a fence proposed between 2 and 3 metres along the A36, and that's potentially gives a landscape impact. But my concern is some of these houses are going to be social rent, and so people don't really have a choice but to live there. And so you may be putting people into houses that have road noise, and when they close the windows in the summer, it could overheat. And this is an issue in the acoustic report. So I'd really like to see more detail. I'd like to see the strategy in front of us that is required under a condition, because it's all very vague at the moment. That's my main concern. I'd like to really defer this to get that strategy in front of us, so we can see that it's acceptable for the new residents, and there's a formal words around that. But so I'm not so concerned about the sewage. I'm not so concerned about the heritage. But we've got questions about the highway safety as well. So if we can have a highways officer, that would be great. But is that? Can I get an answer about the noise as well? What authors think about that proposal?
Thank you, Adam. Shall we go first to further assurances from the highways? And I think, is it Adam with us there?
Yes, I'm still here. Okay. Okay. So let me just explain a little bit about the assessment process when we're consulted. We have to look at exactly what is going on the existing highway. We do look at the number of accesses in the area. We look at the use of those accesses. We also look at the level of intensification that is likely to occur from the development site. So bearing all that in mind, what we've looked at is how the existing roads in Beckington work and the sort of environment you have there. So the photos and things show there are a number of accesses already in fairly close proximity. But we look at the fact that there are already numerous locations in the vicinity of the village with similar layouts. For example, just give you a few examples. Well-used accesses such as the Memorial Hall, the Recreation Ground access, and its proximity to the junction of Trowbridge Road and Bath Road. You're only talking 20 metres apart. There's a housing access for a number of properties near the junction of Bath Road, Warminster Road, Frome Road, and that's only 8 metres from the roundabout. You've got near the junction of the Leys and Goose Street, you've got the family practice building there. You've got a number of houses, and there are 4 junctions, well-used junctions, within 70 metres of each other. Now, if this was an inherently dangerous situation in this location, it would be reflected in the collision data we hold on record that is provided to us by your local constabulary. So as part of our assessments, we had a look at the collision data we hold, and for the last 5 years, there are none. So this suggests to us that, yes, okay, you might have a few accesses in close proximity, but it's not an inherently dangerous situation. Adding into that, the fact that this development will create only sort of 15 to 17 vehicles in the peak hour, sort of average of 1 every 4 minutes, if you like. Were we to raise an objection on these grounds, and were the developer to submit an appeal to the planning inspectorate, we would have to justify our objections. We would have to evidence why we were raising concerns, bearing in mind that the National Planning Policy Framework says we can only raise objections if the impact on the highway infrastructure was severe. We would have to evidence why we felt this was a severe increase, a severe risk to highway users. And following our assessments, we don't think that evidence is there. So the site is big enough to be able to provide an access in accordance with policy standards. with visibility displays. The internal layout can be arranged according to policy. And so we had to take the view that a recommendation of no objection subject to conditions to be able to secure a suitable access was the appropriate way to go.
Thank you, Adam. That's helpful. And the question of noise mitigation.
Thank you, Chair. So what we've got in front of us is an outline planning application just with the access to be approved. So until we have a fixed layout, we don't know what the acoustic mitigation will need to look like. Because I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but you know that sound travels in straight line waves, doesn't it? It sort of pushes out the sound noise, and a barrier, you can block a lot of noise with a solid barrier. It doesn't ping off in quite the same way as light and other waves. So that solid barrier between source and receptor does an awful lot of work in terms of reducing the noise impact. So we have standards that we look to achieve. 55 decibels is considered, an acceptable noise level in your garden area, and then there are requirements for good sleep overnight. So we all know what those levels are that we need to achieve, and whether it's measured over an 8-hour period or whatever it might be. The technical specialists are better placed to detail that. So what we know is that we've got a noise source on the A36, and we've got some receptors, which is the proposed housing. What we don't know is how those housing units are going to be disposed across the site. And I share your concern that people who are in need of affordable housing shouldn't be put in an unpleasant noise environment. That's absolutely not what we want to achieve here. We want to make sure that we've got a well-designed site layout with acoustic mitigation being provided through a number of means. That might be fencing, as happens for across Somerset, where we've got the M5 travelling through large parts of Somerset already. So it might be acoustic fencing. What the cross section that we've had submitted shows is there's room within the applicant's ownership for soft landscaping on either side of that acoustic fencing, outside the National Highways ownership that they might strim or completely flatten. So there is space, subject to ultimate site layout details, for either bunding or close bordered fencing or whatever it might be to provide some of that acoustic barrier. There may be some units that need triple glazing or that need mechanical ventilation, but we don't know which units that is yet, which is why we need a strategy later. We need to know that all of the units have a satisfactory living environment, but we don't know which units need what measures at the moment. So what we would hope to achieve is the best quality for everybody. And if there's one unit that needs mechanical ventilation to avoid overheating, then that might be that might be where the balance, the tipping point is. But we just don't know how many are going to need that where across the site. What we know is that some acoustic mitigation is likely, and we also know that that's an approach that's been taken across Somerset, in lots of different cases elsewhere.
Thank you. Simon, you wish to add?
Yeah, I just think it's an important point that Ros has made there. Again, we look at what's been delivered in and around Bridgewater. And again, we've got the technical experts in the council to make sure that the noise that's generated by the highway, obviously in that case the M5, in this case the A361, shouldn't mean that we have unacceptable living environments for the future populations that are going to live in the houses. So I think Councillor Boyden's comment is a really, really good comment, but I don't think it should prevent the committee from making a decision today.
Thank you for that. Can I just have one piece of clarity? We're looking at an outline, yet we have a large number of, should I call them conditions, policy statements? And for instance, the one on noise mitigation specifically states the scheme shall detail. So you're already making an assumption there. And that's where I think we get a little concerned as members, that we're told it's outlined, but then we've got a condition, we're very clear the scheme has got to do X and Y. And so hence I think Councillor Boyden's concerns about we don't have the detail, but there appears to be a number of assumptions already being made, and I'm not sure where that leaves us. Just an observation.
No, I think that's a really important point to make. So members will be familiar with the 6 tests that we have to apply for planning conditions. They have to be precise, necessary, reasonable, enforceable, related to the development, and reasonable in all other respects. That's my 6 tests, isn't it? Is that right? So we have to make sure that they're precise, and I think that's the really key one here, and enforceable. So we have to be really clear about what somebody has to do, when they have to do it, and what they're trying to achieve out of the end. So I can't say you might do this and you might do that. I have to be really clear what outcome it is that I want to achieve. So here we've got, you shall submit a noise assessment report that the local planning authority will approve. And it tells you when you need to do that. So before you get above damp proof course. So you can start potentially putting your spades in the ground, but you need to tell me what you're doing. It shall detail the construction method for any acoustic fencing, taking account of trees and hedges, and it shall be completed in full in accordance with the timetable that they've told me about. So I've set out what they need to do, when they need to do it, and when they need to have finished it. Because if you and that they need to keep it in place afterwards. Because if you don't hit those markers with your conditions, then it all gets a bit woolly, a bit confused, and there's too much wiggle room and elbow room for the developer. It is supposed to be the case that the controlling mechanisms and the controlling conditions are applied at the outline stage. That's when you're granting permission. That's when you're setting the envelope. Then at the reserved matters stage, conditions that get applied are supposed to be more around the detail in terms of the plan. So the fundamentals need to be done at this outline stage.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Adam?
Yeah, thanks. Follow-on question. I'd say, yeah, note the wording of the condition requires a strategy, which sounds to me quite a high-level thing rather than a plan, details. But it also says the strategy would be submitted and approved by the local planning authority prior to development above, damp proof course level on any dwelling. So basically, the layout could be fixed before the strategy is even drafted. Fixed and started work before the strategy is even drafted. So that allows potentially dwellings to be put in place and started to be built on the ground before there's a strategy for mitigating noise, which is going to be too late for some measures. So I think either we completely reword that, or we need details, and maybe an outline application is inappropriate for this site.
So there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is that the developer will know what they need to comply with. So hopefully, so they should at the reserve matters stage be submitting something that works. But I would be more than happy to pull that trigger back to it should accompany the reserve matters application involving layout. And I think that would be a really sensible thing to do.
Okay. Do we need to get an amendment to that?
Yes, we would do.
Okay. Yeah. Adam, you'll come back on that one. Okay. Any other comments from anyone? I have Barry and I think Dawn.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Dawn. Just very quickly, Chair, we've got disproportionate growth, 200% of what they were told they were going to have. This is quite unfair on a village like Beckington. The sewerage is probably not going to affect anything at all because it's the result of a desk study and it's not a result of a practical study at all. And we had a similar exercise at Colford where the results of another 140 houses, I think, would not result in any effect on the sewage system, which is clearly nonsense. Local collision data from experiences we've had elsewhere, local collision data, I'm sure there is no data recorded over the last 5 years because it's only recorded if somebody is hurt. Accidents between vehicles do not appear on Avon and Somerset's list. So I'm not sure I believe the local collision data at all. Construction management plan, we have no idea what it would be and how it would affect the area. And after this morning's experiences with up to, I think we should say, up to 30 houses. and we'll have a look at it. That's the 35. We know where we're going with this, Ross. Little gardens, everything squashed in, bad access, and really an unsatisfactory development. So I'm against it. Sorry.
Simon Trafford.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, I don't want to repeat what Councillor Boyden said or what your highway specialist has said, because they've given you quite clear what their views are on some of the points that Councillor Clark's raised. Just on the overdevelopment point, and again, Councillor Clark's right in terms of the percentages, but it is worth noting that is since 2006, and the local plan requirement was 55, and the village has had 110 delivered. So again, as a one-off figure delivered in a year, it sounds quite dramatic, but actually, when you put it in context, it's over nearly a 20-year period. The local plan said a minimum of 55, and there's been 110 built. And again, we've heard what the inspectors said about the proportionate growth issue in relation to the site's location. And I think, you know, it's quite clear that in terms of balancing the sustainability of the site against harm to the strategic local plan delivery, that the harm won't be outweighed. So yeah, it's right, 200%, but there's quite a big picture context to that. Over 20 years, 55 against 110.
Thank you, Simon. Dawn.
Yeah, thank you. I also just wanted to mention that because we're on the Wiltshire border, it's quite useful to contact the Wiltshire Police for data, because we had that issue in Road before where the Avon and Somerset wasn't called to incidents, but the Wiltshire Police were, or ambulance services in some instances. Yeah, so it's interesting because I agree with the water capacity, the sewage capacity. Most of the issues are from rainwater, and therefore that only happens in heavy rain. But we know that Wessex Water puts in about, I think it's about 50% capacity, I think they told us generally with the sewage works, and the fact that they've got a new, they're going to be investing in 2035 means that they are approaching their capacity in Beckington, which I suppose is a concern. I also just wanted to ask about Mr. Winterbourne asked about the Selwood Garden community. Now, I know we have to look at each application in front of us, but that's going to have quite a big impact because there's going to be money coming for the roundabouts if that goes ahead, and that would have a real impact on the access coming off the A36 into Beckington. So I just wanted to know if that was something that we could consider. And also, the acoustic barrier, I think, is a real concern. The fact that you have to put it up, and actually the consultant did say that the fact that you have to put something up already means that there's a problem. And noise is, of course, an issue that we know can have an impact on an application. And I just wanted to know if at this stage the BioNet gain is, because on this application it's going to be off-site. Does it have to be mentioned at this point, or is that just we'll just hope that they come forward with something and what their plans are for the off-site BNG? Look at me being all cool, BNG. I know what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Ros?
So because this application is caught by the statutory biodiversity net gain provisions, there is a requirement that they deliver 10% above the existing site biodiversity. But the way that BNG works is it considers habitats, and in a very generalised sense. That's the regime that we're working in. It considers generalised habitats. So it considers that the general biodiversity levels will increase as a consequence of biodiversity net gain. It's a little bit like, I know we don't have it here, but a bit like the community infrastructure levy. It's trying to consider things at a more strategic biodiversity level. So we know that they intend to meet their requirement off-site. They can't do it on-site with everything else that they need to achieve, but it is not incumbent on them to tell us specifically what they're going to do. We know that they're going to buy credits. The way that buying credits works is that if your credits are a long way from your development site, you have to pay a multiplier, so it costs more. So the further away from the site you buy your credits, the more money it's going to cost them. That is the regime we are in. It is a spreadsheet driven regime. So long as they are meeting their 10% and hitting the local ecology policy objectives, there is no BNG reason for refusal. And that's the position we're in. We have satisfied Natural England, we've satisfied ourselves in terms of the ecology position and the necessary mitigation on site. BNG will be dealt with through a statutory condition that the development team will have to discharge downstream.
Can I just ask about, is there any engagement with the community in that aspect? No, it'll just be done on paper. Okay.
Yeah.
And then just the Selwood Garden community.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question. Sorry, Stanley, you were going to respond.
Just on the Selwood Garden Village point, again, the decision hasn't been issued yet, so we don't know, obviously, whether or not it will be granted approval. If it is granted approval, there will be some improvements to the A361 network. But again, I don't think that should prejudice your decision on this application. You've obviously heard from the Highway Authority, and Emma's here to just add probably to that point in terms of any concerns about the SGV works.
Yeah.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, just a quick input from me. You've got the joy of two highways officers today. With regards to the works to the roundabouts being majority funded by Selwood, I'm trying to pick my words correctly, if Selwood gets permission, those works to those roundabouts will need to happen at some point, but they will not be detrimental to this application. Any works being done to those roundabouts and displays as you approach the roundabouts are being done wholly within highway land currently. If that helps at all, Councillor Denton.
Not really, simply because if they've already got a problem and they already have that in the Selwood Garden community applications as an issue, then surely that would be an issue here too. That was just kind of my joining dots.
Okay, yeah, on that point, if I may carry on, Chair, the issues with those roundabouts are existing issues now, which is why any development in and around Frome and Beckington are having to put monies towards DP27, policy DP27 for the works for those roundabouts. So the works for those roundabouts need to happen. The level of vehicle movements associated with this development will not be significant enough to either topple it over totally now or after the Selwood application comes forward, if granted permission. There is obviously contingency built into the works being done.
Okay, thank you for that.
It is worth saying on that point that actually, as part of the Section 106 agreement, if plan permission is granted for this scheme will also make a contribution towards those highway improvements that are identified through DP27. So effectively, this scheme would work in conjunction with whatever improvements are delivered to the A361 roundabouts.
Okay, thank you for that. Two questions from me quickly. One is, there's so many conditions sitting in here, but I may have missed it, but I can't see anything about active travel at all. Are you expecting to then deal with it under reserve matters, or where are we on that one?
So substantially, some of the details will come through in the reserve matters, but we do have, I found the number earlier so that I could tell you about it, Chair. In the estate roads condition, we've got no development shall commence until details of the internal estate roads, footways, footpaths, including a connection to Goose Street, verges, junctions and street lighting. So we are in a primary village. It has pedestrian connection, pretty good pedestrian connectivity around the village. We are requesting that north-south permeability through the site through this condition. we anticipate that that would be detailed in the reserved matters.
Okay, can I just point out that active travel can go beyond just somebody walking. It's disability, it's gradient, it's the quality of the track and the width of the track. And I just concerned in that respect that those things are taken into account. The next question I have is, I know I read out I think I passed it round now, a concern from I think a local resident in Goose Street. And I don't know, you obviously must have seen his comments in the general objections you've received, and I just wondered, just because I'm very aware that it wasn't very easy to read, it was a fairly fragmented note, as you probably gathered, but the underlying concern was about heights and ridge heights and that sort of thing, and the impact on Goose Street. And I just wondered if you could just confirm that it's been taken into account.
So at the moment, because it's an outline application, we don't have anything to assess in those terms. It is likely, very possible, that at the reserved matters stage, the way that the development impacts on those properties with which it shares a boundary will be a key consideration. And at the moment, having looked at the topographical information that was submitted with the application, I'm not concerned about the relationship between new homes and the existing properties. But when we get to the reserved matters stage, there is the opportunity, if there are concerns about those relationships, for open space to be placed near those dwellings, or for dwellings near the boundaries to be single story or 1.5 story. All of that is up for grabs as part of the detailed design considerations at the reserved matters stage. So here and now, the site is big enough for the number of dwellings that's been proposed, and there are reserved matters solutions that can satisfactorily deliver a design solution that doesn't have an impact on the heritage or the amenity of the Goose Street properties.
Okay, thank you for that assurance. I think it's quite important. Right, I've got two people, Adam Boyden and then Martin.
So it's just a quick one. Due to childcare issues, I'm going to have to leave in a couple of minutes, I'm afraid, so I probably won't be here for the decision.
Martin?
Yeah, compared to the last time Beckington came up, I mean, this looks to me a more favourable application, simply because we're looking at a sort of urbanised stretch here. I've got the map in front of me. Yeah, there's a dual carriageway along one side. The noise attenuation issue has been addressed, although, I think if somebody buys a house in this area, they're going to have to consider that, whether that effectively works. You've got a petrol station, a Marks and Spencer's supermarket petrol station, Starbucks, Travelodge on the edge there, very busy road. I'm thinking that I accept what Mr. Winterbourne said about the access. One thing I don't think that's a very fast road. Perhaps I could ask for an answer on that. Is that a 30-mile-an-hour road?
Adam, can you answer that question for me, please, or Emma?
Yeah,
with speed on the road?
Let me just, I'll just call up our system and I'll be able to tell you exactly where the speed limit starts and stops along there. Just give me 30 seconds if you would, please.
Okay.
I'll carry on then, if I may, Adam, while you're looking at that, just to finish up what I'm saying. I think my big problem is with Beckington has always been the water issues. I know with the flooding and the sewage mitigation now, I'm sort of reassured that the sewage mitigation may work effectively. It's not something I wish to put my mortgage on there, but I hope that it would actually work effectively, because that village does need it and needs to be addressed. And I'll come back to something I said earlier, water butts. Can that be factored in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wearing my Somerset Rivers Authority hat, I'm very aware that Beckington has had huge investment to separate surface water from foul water. And there's been anyone who's been there, roadworks to actually do that. And so the impact on the treatment work has been significantly reduced because they're separated out, the surface water. So I'm heartened that if we have spent it wisely, the consultation, the roadworks, the separation, then Beckington going forward will be in a much stronger position in terms of surface water than many other communities, which I'm delighted for them.
Just to finish, of course, we've got the bathing water issue at Farley Hungerford, which is a difficult one to resolve. But I mean, it's been pretty appalling that has, historically has been a bathing site and people have not been able to go in it. So I have those reservations, but I'm hoping that they can be overcome.
Good. If there are no other questions or comments, can I ask for a proposal here, please?
Adam was coming back to me on the road online.
Oh, my apologies, Mark.
Yeah.
Adam?
Yes, certainly. Looked at the speed limit, and the speed limit is 30 mile an hour across the site frontage, and it changes to the national speed limit just before the roundabout to the east. So vehicles coming from the east, i.e. the approach direction closest to the access, will only just have come around the roundabout and negotiated, and they'll be facing that 30 mile an hour limit. So yeah, it is within the 30 mile an hour speed limit.
Great, thank you for that. Right. Unless there are any other questions, could I have a proposal from someone here this afternoon? We have a recommendation to approve with a significant number of conditions. Rob, are you happy to propose?
Well, it's a funny site. I mean, they're squeezing in, but I don't think we've really got any reason to turn it down from what we've been hearing. So I propose we accept it with the condition that we have a satisfactory active travel route supplied beforehand down to Goose Lane.
Yeah, both on-site and off-site active travel.
If it helps, Chair, we've noted that you've discussed changing the timing of the noise mitigation to be submitted with the reserve matters. So that would be a change to condition 12. And we've noted water butts to be provided, which can either be a bespoke condition or we can add in to condition 5 in terms of the overall surface water drainage system that they would need to propose. And then we've talked about the active travel connection is already covered in the estate roads condition, which is number.
But that's internal, and we're looking for external.
It would cover the external. It would be a link from the site to Goose Street.
What number are we looking at?
Okay, so we have a proposal.
Number 16. Including connection to Goose Street.
Okay. Section 16, Chair, it does say a footpath connection to Goose Street. Could we change that to a satisfactory active travel route to Goose Street? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So do we then have a recommendation for approval of the scheme with all the conditions and with the 3 amendments? Are people content with that? Who would like to second? Tony Robbins. So proposed by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Robbins. And could I then have a show of hands to support the proposal? 8. 8 for, and those against? 2. And any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everyone. Right, we'll now move on to next item on the agenda, which is looking at the appeal decisions. And we have in front of us a number, and I don't know whether or not would one of the officers like to make any comment on these. These are the most recent ones from October, I guess, November. I think we are getting some more at the meeting next week as well. Any lessons to be learnt from these?
Thank you, Chair. I can comment on the appeal number 1. Nothing really to note in particular on that one. That was an application for the conversion of a dwelling and a hair salon into a care home. This was refused under delegated powers. The reasons related to character and appearance and sort of overdevelopment of the site. I mean, this is a sort of standard residential area, and it was essentially just considered inappropriate location for this sort of type of development. I don't think there's anything huge in terms of lessons learned from that one. It was just a correct appeal decision, I think, in our view. And then the ones which follow, I think Simon might be able to add a few more details to. Probably the appeal 3 might be the one of most interest to members.
Good, yeah, members, that was the third appeal is the application for the battery storage site, land north of Styles Close. You probably remember came to you with an officer recommendation for approval. There was a high level of objection from local residents. Your decision reflected their concerns, and the applicant lodged an appeal, and the appeal was allowed. Again, I'm sure if you haven't read the appeal, the inspector does effectively consider the concerns that you had and local residents had, but his view was that there was sufficient separation distance from the back of the residential properties through to the area of the agricultural field where the battery storage unit would take place. I think the other concern that local residents had was the construction during the construction phase. Bring construction vehicles in through a cul-de-sac arrangement, and again on that point, he was satisfied that because it would only be for a short period of time, to complete the construction phase, that will be sufficient to overturn a recommendation for approval. But I mean, again, Councillor Clark always asked me, so I'll preempt his question. They weren't successful with cost, Barry, so we didn't fail on that point.
I'd add one bit that I noticed particularly from the inspector's report, and that was that he highlighted that paragraph 161 of the framework establishes that we need to cover as a material consideration support for infrastructure associated with net zero transition. And I think that played a significant part in terms of allowing the appeal.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other thoughts on anything else, or was I more than happy to call this one to a halt?